but I'm a symbol for all that the left-wingers and the godless people hate. And they hate Jesse Helms.
I do not hate Senator Helms. Please let me be honest about that. I truly don't. I do hate what I think he has propagated.
Well, the Atlantis are black. I'm white. Neither of us choose to be either. I've got the campaign on who he is and what he is, and I know both now.
People have feelings about racial issues, and we exploited those feelings in the campaigns very ruthlessly to our benefit.
You want to shake hands?
I know people that call him homophobic and a woman hater and a racist. The Jesse Helms that I got to know very closely personally was a man who was very compassionate, very private in his charity.
How do you square the Jesse Helms who adopted a boy with cerebral palsy and somebody who wants to cut out food stamps for poor children?
Dead wrong on Martin Luther King holiday, dead wrong on a number of things. He did what he believed was the right thing to do, and I think the longer he was here, the more open he became to other ideas.
Jesse Helms is actually the model for the active political American. That one person can not only make a difference, but can help to change the philosophy and direction and ideology of an entire continental nation. Whether you like him or dislike him, whether you like or dislike his philosophy, he was at the heart of a conservative movement that changed America from the 1970s to today.
The criticisms people have of Jesse, and I consider him a close friend. I know that's ridiculous sounding, but it's true. I think are generational with Jesse.
What that perverted homosexual filth is not modern-day Michelangelo. It is modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah.
Well, you know, Jesse grew up in a time and era where it was like, that doesn't exist. I mean, what are you talking about here? You know?
Jesse Alexander Helms Jr. was born in 1921 in the small town of Monroe, nestled among the cotton fields of the North Carolina Piedmont. Though Jesse would leave his hometown at age 18, Monroe and its people instilled in him values about morality and authority, about poverty and race, and about God that would stay with him for life.
Well, in the first place, it was the greatest hometown anybody could possibly have, anywhere, anytime. They were some of the happiest days of my life.
Small, you call it a country town. A lot of people walking the streets because they didn't have anywhere else to go.
You walked into any store, you knew practically everyone in it. You knew that they knew you and your family just as well. No matter what you did, good or bad, it got out right quick.
3,000 population, 4 Republicans, 2,996 Democrats.
The railroad depot was there, and I've seen the trains go through. Went to Atlanta, and I've seen the rich folks in the dining cars there eating, and I couldn't imagine anything better than that.
Like most in Monroe, the Helmses were devout Southern Baptists, fundamentalists who took the Bible literally. Jesse recalled that his mother, Ethel May, was there every time the First Baptist Church opened its doors. Monroe had both the good parts of small-town Southern living and some of the bad parts. The good parts were the ability to relate to people, the small-town friendliness. The bad part of it is that there was the small-town narrowness of it, very traditional views of race.
We were very, very segregated. Black families living in little houses, shacks, we call them. Our children played with them, and we associated with them, friendly, but very segregated. You don't ask them in for Sunday lunch.
I don't remember that my parents said you will not play with so-and-so anymore. just happened. And it happened when I went to school. They weren't there.
Yeah, so in many ways, I think the relationship between the races was far better than it is now. I can give you 1,000 examples of why I'm convinced of that. I don't know of anybody who ever persecuted anybody of another race.
With only a fourth-grade education, Jesse Helms Sr. struggled to support his family during the Depression, working as both a police officer and assistant fire chief of Monroe. A teetotaler with a passion for putting bootleggers out of business, Jesse Sr. and his wife were said to not only hate liquor, but also those who grew the corn that made the liquor.
Big man, tall, Mr. Jesse, they called him. And everybody knew what he said was he meant it. But that's what I said, and that's what you do, boy.
I think Mr. Jesse for a follow, he didn't get him anything because he knew if he got into it, he got twice the punishment anybody else would have gotten because his daddy expected him to do right.
And I got the impression by talking to some of the blacks that they were a little bit afraid of Mr. Jesse. He wouldn't do what he said and not get in his way.
What his father was a typical small-town Southern chief of police of his time. He was tough on blacks, tough on criminals, but the blacks thought he was particularly tough on blacks.
As the Depression lingered, Jesse worked at the local drugstore jerking sodas and as a night watchman at the mortuary. He was drum major and played in the high school band, winning first prize in a state contest playing Flight of the Bumblebee on his tuba.
His eyes were large, and they protruded a little bit. They teased him about it, so I guess he thought he was maybe more unattractive than some of the rest of them.
Jesse had a big vocabulary for a country town, one friend recalled, and he often told folks to look in a dictionary to see if he was insulting them. In his high school yearbook, Jesse Helms was named Most Obnoxious.
He was very reluctant to be quiet until he got his way, and that's what he usually got.
Dreaming of becoming a newspaper reporter, Helms also worked as a sports writer for the Monroe paper.
He woke up down the sidelines carrying that little typewriter with him. I never did see him typing on it, but he always had an article in the paper the next day.
In 1948, Helms became news director of Raleigh radio station WRAL and its tobacco network. His employer was conservative lawyer and businessman A.J. Fletcher, who introduced Helms to North Carolina's political power brokers and the growing rift in the one-party Democratic South.
And these damnable proposals he has recommended under the guise of so-called civil rights.
Just months after Helms started his new job, South Carolina Governor Strom Thurmond led the Dixiecrat revolt of conservative Southern Democrats against Democratic President Harry Truman's civil rights proposals. North Carolina's 1950 Democratic U.S. Senate primary would be a watershed in the state's history, and the font in which Jesse Helms would receive his baptism into hardball politics. Officially, Helms was a radio reporter covering the contest between incumbent Senator Frank Porter Graham, the liberal former UNC president, and Willis Smith, a conservative Raleigh attorney supported by A.J. Fletcher. What Helms may have done unofficially to help defeat Frank Graham is a source of heated debate to this day. Despite Smith's assertions that Graham associated with Communist Front organizations, Graham won a strong plurality in the first primary, and Smith all but decided not to call for a runoff. The three Supreme Court decisions furthering desegregation inflamed racial fears, and Jesse Helms took to the airwaves.
I said, Willis Smith probably will not call for a second primary unless supporters like you go to his home right now and urge him to run. And there was so many cars on that.
Smith called for a runoff, and race became the central issue. Handbills were circulated warning of the perils of racial mixing and pointing out block voting by blacks for Graham in the first primary.
When Dr. after Frank Graham got all of the black vote, it certainly became an issue in he is the darling of the black population, and there was a reaction to that. A lot of very shady tactics were used in the Willis Smith campaign against Frank Graham, and Jesse was in it up to his neck.
Could you describe your role, if any, in the Willis Smith campaign?
None, except that I supported it.
The election turned on fear generated by the race issue, and Willis Smith defeated Frank Graham in the runoff.
Willis Smith won despite being opposed by the elites because he connected with the little people of North Carolina. He represented their fears, maybe some of their hatreds. So Helms learned the lesson that if you want to win campaigns, you better connect with all those little people because they outvote the elites.
A person's first great success in life becomes his the formative experience that he repeats over and over. I think the fact that those tactics worked taught him that this is the way to go, and that's the way he went.
Katherine Massey Book Club, The Context of White Supremacy. Thus, the Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Friday, July 31st, 2026. So I have been told this is our fourth session on the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams. We are picking up on chapter 22. We left off last week. What a cliffhanger. Robert F. getting his military intelligence files. Wow. Those are public records, again, state. Anyway, the audio that we heard before we hop to it, that was from the documentary Senator No, on the late suspected race soldier Jesse Helms Jr. We have heard about both Jesse Helms Sr. and Jr. I thought that was great because they gave a lot of extra background information about Monroe, North Carolina, which we've already been hearing from the victim perspective. So now we got to hear from the race soldier perspective of North Carolina. I thought just for folks, since you don't have the visual, you can watch that documentary on YouTube if you are so inclined. But that was former president, suspected race soldier Joe Biden saying that, hey, Jesse Helms Jr. was dead wrong on the Martin Luther King holiday, and saying that we were close friends. And I know that sounds racist. I mean, he said, I know that sounds ridiculous. And I thought, no, that does not sound ridiculous. One, because you're both classified as white. We could stop right there. If you need a little more, I'm going to give you a little more. We here at the Katherine Massey Book Club, we read Dear Senator by S.E.B. Washington Williams. So we got both of the Carolinas with regards to racism. In that book, we read where Joe Biden, well, we didn't read it, but we included it in our study. Joe Biden gave the eulogy for Strom Thurmond, and we played some of that eulogy while we were listening to Dear Senator, S.E.B. Washington Williams. Cowbell. And he got a great kick out of that. So, no, I didn't find it ridiculous. Apparently, Joe Biden is cool with a number of racists. That said, he said that Senator Helms, that the longer he was here, he was open to more ideas. Now, he didn't say the longer he was here, hey, he realized that he should not be practicing white supremacy racism against black people. He didn't say that. He said that, hey, Jesse Helms, I guess maybe Strom Thurmond too, it was just generational. He was a man of his times. You know, he was a man of his era. You know, in his times, it's like, what are you talking about? That stuff didn't exist. What are you talking about, Joe Biden? What are you talking about? Practicing racism, white supremacy is timeless. And equally, practicing justice is timeless. So what are you talking about? There were individuals at that time saying, hey, you should not be mistreating people on the basis of color. So what do you mean? Joe Biden. Anyway, it said, as it continued, they talked to some of the other people classified as white about old Jesse Helms Jr., and they said that Monroe, North Carolina had with population of 3,000. They said that there were 4 Republicans at that time, talking about the mid-20th century, 4 Republicans, 2,996 Democrats. They didn't say we had 4 racists, 2,996 non-racists. They didn't say that. They said that Jesse Helms Sr., that is who Robert F. Williams was telling us that he saw grab a black female and drag her down the street. Jesse Helms Sr. with a 4th grade education. I suspect if you got a 4th grade education, he might be one of those illiterate white people that Robert F. has been telling us about, like the white person that he worked with couldn't even read his own time card and such. They said that was Jesse Helms Jr. saying that race relations, as he said, are way better now, meaning when he was talking currently about this film, so that's probably like 20 years ago. We'll call it maybe 2000, maybe late 1990s. He said race relations were way better beforehand, I guess when he was talking about his childhood or whatever, than they were now. He explained, he said that I never knew anyone who persecuted another race. Now, again, Robert F. has already told us, I saw his dad dragging a black female down the street, and we just heard people in the film say that, man, the black people thought he was right tough on them. Man, with a 4th grade and just a white man who operated like a standard white enforcement officer now or then in a racist town with 3,000 people and a 4th grade education. You do the math. And then you put that with what you heard from Robert F. already. Anyway, it said that the black people were a little bit afraid of Mr. Jesse. That's Jesse Helms Jr., the senator. That's his dad, who was the police officer and worked at the fire department. Why would they be afraid of? Why wouldn't everybody be a little bit afraid of him? The black people especially, they thought he was tough racist, race soldier, terrorist. They said that Jesse Helms Jr. was a guard at the mortuary. I just thought that was interesting because of our history of grave robbing that we studied, medical apartheid, some of the other guests that we've had on the program. In fact, Harriet A. Washington told us that white people traditionally have placed medical colleges deliberately in areas that are close to where a large population of black people live so that they'll have ample subjects and cadavers to study. A mortuary. He worked at the mortuary as a guard. The young Jesse Helms. They said that young Jesse Helms aspired to be a journalist. He was a sports writer, and then he got a job at WRAL Radio. I thought that was so important because last week we heard how Robert F. Williams, as a young person, he was going to California, and he was so excited, and he, like many, thought, hey, I'm going to California, I'm getting away from racism, I'm in the armed services, I'm going to get journalism training, this is going to be amazing. And he gets out there, and they're like, oh no, nigger. Niggers don't get no journalism training. Meanwhile, Jesse Helms Jr., the offspring of a white man with a 4th grade education who can't even read the newspaper probably, hey, come on in and run WRAL Radio, which still operates in North Carolina to this day. When they talk about the race, political race between Dr. Frank Graham, white man suspected racist, and Willis Smith, different white man suspected racist, and Jesse Helms Jr., his involvement in that campaign and the runoff specifically, one, in making sure that there was a runoff election, and then they said, race became the central issue. Racism, white supremacy, and didn't they sound just like Ben Tillman, who we also read about covering both Carolinas, which is the threat of Negro domination. The Negro voting bloc. They said that the Negroes, oh my goodness, oh, Dr. Frank Graham, the darling of the Negroes, oh, the threat of Negro domination hangs over us like the sword of Damocles. That's Ben Tillman, one of my favorite lines from his book. And then they went ahead and got the election for Mr. Smith. And you heard that was the young Jesse Helms saying when they asked him, what was your involvement in the Smith campaign? He said, oh, none, except that I supported it. I didn't do nothing nefarious. I didn't do nothing telling them to be afraid of the Negro. I didn't do no such a thing. No. Deception. Master deceivers. That's it. They said there were some shady tactics used in that election. Watch that word. It should have been in the word guide right there. Mr. Fuller informed us how to think. We will get to it. Picking up on chapter 22, we are hearing Flight of the Bumblebee. Bzz. Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy, audio segment 1.
Chapter 22, Request Mass and Separation from the Corpse. One night, while strolling alone through the company area, I met an Afro-American Marine sergeant. He was a veteran of many battles in the Pacific. He had the medals to prove it. He said he knew of my problems but could not afford to get personally involved because he would be eligible for retirement in another 18 months and could possibly jeopardize his standing. He informed me that he was going to give me some information that could help me, but that if I should see him again, I was to please not speak to him. He scanned the area, lowered his voice, and told me that there was a little man white in the corpse that very few Marines had ever heard of. He explained that Marines were the President's special troops, and that there was a procedure called Request Mass. He informed me that I should write a letter of complaint addressed to the Commandant, seal it, and write Private Request Mass on the envelope. He said that I should present it to the Sergeant Major, and he would be duty-bound under regulations to pass it up through channels. He wished me good luck and disappeared into the night. I thanked him, went back to the barrack, and wrote my letter. I followed his detailed instructions. When I presented the request mass to the company sergeant, he became very nervous and asked me what my problem was. I told him it was a private matter and that it could not be solved there and that I wanted an audience with the commandant. He tried his best to dissuade me. Later in the day, the company commander summoned me to his office. He was nervously mopping the sweat from his face, and his attitude was completely different from what it had been toward me. He tried in vain to persuade me that he could handle any problem that I had. He said that if I didn't withdraw the request mass, that he would have to deliver it to the battalion commander. He even made a pitch to curry sympathy from me. I informed him that I would not withdraw my complaint. When I made it to the battalion commander, he too was all smiles and mustered his best condescending attitude. The regimental commander repeated the act. He explained that this was a serious request and that he could solve my problem if I allowed him to. My spirits soared again in light of the fact that I had bargaining power. A few days after the request mass had started through channels, the commanding officer again summoned me to his office. This time he was desperate. My request mass had reached General Good, the base commander. He had consented to grant me an audience in 3 days. It seemed that the commanding officer, C.O., was straining every muscle in his body to muster a pleasant, friendly mask on his face. His trembling hands betrayed his vain attempt to conceal his panic. In 3 days' time, the C.O. was driving me by jeep to see the commanding general. He shook with fear and asked me if I was not nervous to go before the general. I replied to him, "No, he's just a man like me." He confessed, "I'm always nervous when I go before such high brass." I was left sitting on a bench outside the old man's office as the captain went in for a brief conference. The captain came back looking scared and anxious as he informed me, "General Good will see you now." Facing the general, I saluted, stood at attention, and waited for a response from the old man. He fumbled through papers on his desk without looking up at me. I suppose he kept me standing frozen at attention for a good 10 minutes that seemed to span an eternity. He finally looked up from his desk with his eyes glaring in cold contempt toward me. "At ease," he finally blurted out, then added, "All you want is to go to Information Services, right, Marine?" "Yes, sir," I intoned. "You don't have any problem that I can't solve, Marine. You've started a process of request mass, and only you can rescind it. If you insist on going through with it, the Marine Corps will have to fly you all the way to Washington for an audience with the commandant. If that happens, it will mean that an enlisted man had a problem that we could not solve on this base. That will be a black mark on the record of every officer here at Camp Pendleton. You wouldn't want to do that, would you, Marine?" "No, sir," I responded. "If all you want is to go to Quantico, I can arrange that for you. But before I can do that for you, you will have to withdraw your request mass. Do you want me to send you to Information Services?" "Yes, sir." "Then sign this petition for withdrawal," he said, as he pushed the already prepared order to the edge of the desk before me. I signed, feeling at peace and that progress was again an avenue toward contentment and pride in belonging to the U.S. Marine Corps. As soon as my signed withdrawal was secure in his hands, a scowl appeared on General Good's face. His lips quivered with anger, and he growled, "You're an ex-doggy soldier, and ex-doggies don't make good Marines. You're a troublemaker. You don't belong in the Corps, and I'm going to see to it that you are drummed out." I knew that I had been had. I had fallen for an age-old trick. It was a perennial trick that the white man had used throughout history to deprive people of color of property and their birthrights. Historically, the white man has manifested a high-intensity talent for deception in dealing with gullible third-world people who sought honesty where none existed. The broken promise and the forked tongue were the greatest weapons for conquest in the devious white man's arsenal. I could imagine that my feelings were parallel to those of the African who boarded the slave ship, beguiled by feigned generosity and benevolence. I felt that my feelings must have approximated those of the Native Americans and the Aborigines who gambled their birthrights on the promise of men who had less respect for them and for themselves than they had for common street dogs. In 3 weeks, I was taken before a board of old white naval officers who rigged a situation wherein I was given an undesirable discharge. All of this was done in violation of the existing naval regulations. I was placed under guard, escorted to a private compartment on a railway car, and shipped to North Carolina with a notation that I could not remain in California. All of this was consummated despite the fact that the medical examiner had recommended a general discharge, and one of my former platoon leaders had submitted a written statement that he thought I could make a worthwhile contribution to the Corps if allowed to remain in service. In addition to the termination, it was stipulated that I was not to be given any more GI Bill money for education. The whole affair was geared to the fulfillment of the promise that I had come into the Corps as a black ditch digger and I would go out as a ditch digger. The intent was that I would go home a broken and hopeless black man of even less value than what a Jim Crow society decreed my people from birth. I went home, not broken, but driven by anger. Chapter 23. Return to Dixie to join the struggle. Once back in civilian life, I tried in vain to get the discharge changed. I tried in vain to get more GI Bill money for school. Though I had experience in the auto and aircraft industries, Douglas Aircraft in Charlotte, North Carolina, turned me down and even tried to have the federal attorney indict me because I used my honorable Army discharge in applying for employment there instead of my more recent undesirable discharge, which I was attempting to get reversed. It appeared that my government and my country had declared war on me. But after much reflection, I came to feel that my country had declared de facto war on me at birth, when I had been born black. I wasn't going to drop dead. I wasn't going off into a corner to cry and self-destruct. No matter how isolated, no matter how feeble my response, I was going to fight back. Someday they would hear from me again. They would have to deal with me, even if my life was to be lost in the effort. Monroe, North Carolina was the county seat of Union County. The population of Monroe was about 11,000, of which approximately 1/3 was black. It is located 14 miles from the South Carolina border, and its spirit was closer to that of South Carolina than to the liberal atmosphere of Chapel Hill, which people tend to associate with North Carolina. At that time, there were no trade unions in the county, and racism was rampant. At the time of my return, there was also a small and expiring branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The Union County chapter was a typical Southern branch. It was small, not very active, and dominated by and largely composed of the upper crust of the black community. Before the Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka Supreme Court desegregation decision of 1954, the NAACP was not a primary target of local segregationists. In many places in the South, including Monroe, racists were not too concerned with the small local chapters. But the Supreme Court decision drastically altered this peaceful coexistence attitude. The Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizens Councils made it their business to locate any NAACP chapter in their vicinity and to find out who its officers and members were. Threats of violence and economic sanctions were applied to make people withdraw their support. Under this tremendous pressure, chapters already small dwindled rapidly, resulting in many even ceasing to exist. The rank discrimination I had experienced in the Marine Corps had left me bitter, with a feeling that I wanted to join the ranks of forces struggling against racial oppression. As soon as I got home, I attended an NAACP meeting and joined. At the very first meeting I attended after joining, members were being selected as delegates to the state conference of branches. My name was suggested as a delegate to represent the group. It was voted down with the weak excuse that I was too young and that someone more mature should represent the branch. It was a lame excuse, bordering on a not too complimentary joke. Chapter 24. Voted President of the NAACP. Within a year, with only 6 members left, I was voted President of the branch. Soon the 6 members bowed out, feeling white animosity that was spurring economic sanctions and sometimes vicious violence in many parts of the South. I was left with a branch with no members. I soon realized that I had become the victim of a cruel joke. The branch was slated for death, and I was to preside over its last rites. The old NAACP hands did not want the national office in New York to think that fear was overriding their devotion to the cause of social justice. They did not want to be stuck with the stigma of having chickened out. As I approached the black professionals who had operated the organization many years before, their attitude was negative. I was told that if I could get Dr. Kreft, the oldest and most affluent black medical doctor in the area, to renew his membership, other professionals would do likewise. It was more than obvious that I had a catch-22 situation in my hands. I failed to get a single old member to re-enlist. My spirit flagged, and I burned with contempt and disgust. The one positive thing that I had brought out of the Marine Corps was the philosophy of aggressiveness in battle and to shun surrender. The thought of failure in attempting to organize a fighting branch was more than I could accede to. I was determined to revive the organization, but the burning question was, how? Religiously inclined parents tended to discourage their sons from frequenting pool halls. They felt that the halls exerted a bad influence and that they constituted a breeding place for shiftless hustlers. Having been raised in that atmosphere, I never learned to shoot pool, and only on a few occasions had I experienced the inside of one. The local community pool hall was adjacent to a restaurant. One day after leaving the restaurant, I passed the door of the pool hall, and the noise indicated a sizable, jovial group of young men inside. I ventured in. Feeling somewhat awkward, I shouted in a loud voice, "I am the new president of the NAACP, and from this day forward, those white people are going to catch hell in this town. I want you guys to join up and help me." I was surprised that complete silence fell over the room. They had halted their games. One fellow who was about to make a shot froze, looked up at me and asked, "Man, you mean we can join that thing?" "Yeah," I answered. "How much, man?" he wanted to know. $2, I replied. I signed 6 members right there on the pool table. Others stated that as soon as they got $2, they would join as well. Some joined using their wives' names for fear of economic retaliation. Some used chosen fake names and gave my home address. That situation apprised me of the fact that I had been wasting my time on the wrong people. I left the building fired with the confidence that I had struck a winner. The branch was certainly going to experience a rebirth with militancy and with muscle. The following month, I called the first meeting with 30 new members. None of the former cadre attended. When I opened the floor for nomination of officers, the group unanimously agreed that inasmuch as I had single-handedly reconstituted the branch, they felt it to be imperative that I have the most gung-ho officers to work with me. Subsequently, I was given the authority to appoint officers. When I explained that NAACP procedure required an election, someone in the audience said, "To hell with procedure. We were not organizing a Sunday school. We were organizing to fight." It was more than obvious that the most oppressed segment of the community expected vigorous action, and that they were in no mood to create a goody-goody debating club to follow in the footsteps of the old guard. Without much prompting, I agreed to their wishes and appointed all veterans of the military, with the exception of the branch secretary, who was a woman, Mrs. Ethel Azalea Johnson, a local political activist, Dr. Albert E. Perry Jr., an ex-Army officer and a practicing medical doctor, became the vice president. John W. McDowell, an auto body man who was self-employed, became treasurer. Matthew Williams, another veteran, became board chairperson. His task was to set up a board. We went to work immediately, and soon became known as the Big Four. The local library had always been segregated. That was our first target. The library was under the local city recreation department. I called Wally Mars, the chairman of the department, and informed him that the branch wanted the library integrated immediately. He told me that it wouldn't bother him a bit if Negroes used the library. He said that he didn't read there anyway. The very next day, fate presented me with a golden opportunity. A veteran, James Bird, who was enrolled in my local junior college, approached me seeking some answers to a school-related assignment. I suggested that we had a library in town and that he should use it for needed information. He asked me if colored people could use the library. I told him that yes, they could, but no person of color ever went there. I did not tell him that the system didn't serve blacks for fear that the truth might spook him. I told him that I would drive him there. He readily agreed. I stood in the middle of the floor as he approached the desk. The white patrons in the library gave full attention to our appearance. The librarian seemed momentarily stunned. It was obvious that she was straining to maintain her composure. Bird explained that he had a school assignment and that he needed to look up the structure of the state government. Nervously, she brought him a volume and opened it to the page that contained the information he was seeking. I could see that she was anxious to help him to the extent that his time there would be shortened. He took some notes and thanked her, and we started for the door, surrounded by complete silence. As we made our way to the sidewalk, I shook his hand and congratulated him. "For what?" he asked. "For integrating the library. You are the first one of us to use it," I informed him. "You're joking," he explained. "No, you have made history." "Damn, man, that was a hell of a joke," he stated, smiling broadly, exuding a rare kind of pride that black people had seldom had the occasion to experience. And looking back, it was really a small victory, but a much-needed one. When the news spread through the community, it perked the people's pride and gave them courage and the impetus to struggle against bigger barriers. It was shocking to us that Afro-Americans had met with violence in Virginia and other southern communities endeavoring to integrate libraries when our effort had come without travail. Yale and Town Corporation had constructed a modern plant just at the outskirts of the city. No blacks were hired in skilled capacities, and the word had been brazenly passed that none would be hired. We knew that our fledgling group did not have the clout to force the issue, but our teenage members were full of fire. They voted to protest, if no more than to show our disapproval. Our local black high school students had been skirmishing over community turf control. That internal hostility, commonly associated with gang presence, evaporated as soon as the restlessness was channeled toward constructive endeavors. On Highway 74, in front of Yale and Town Corporation's factory, 12 youths staged a protest line. It was something that had never been seen before in that area. They carried placards charging the company with racial discrimination. The sight of pickets attracted great attention from passers-by. Some racists who passed shouted angry racial epithets. The young people were stoic and became more emboldened. As never before, they were worthy of notice. It turned out to be a mighty training exercise. In the summer of 1956, 3 young black boys lost their lives swimming in unsupervised ponds. It was shocking to the entire community. There was a white swimming pool at a place called Lake Lee. This pool had been constructed by the Works Project Administration with federal funds. Blacks were barred from swimming there. Blacks were allowed in the area only to caddy for white golfers at the exclusive white-only Monroe Country Club adjacent to the pool. In the heat of summer, whites could be seen basking in the cool fun of the pool. The pool was enclosed within the confines of a cyclone fence. It was an attractive center of the forbidden world. The tragic loss of the black children had caused us to take a closer look into the matter of the pool. Our NAACP branch designated Dr. Perry, John McDowell, and me to approach the City Council with a request that time be set aside wherein black children could use the pool. We asked for 3 days a week. The City Council replied with a resounding no. We asked them for 2 days. Council members' response again was negative. We told them that we were willing to settle for 1 day a week, just 1 day set aside for our children, and the answer was the same, no. When we asked why not, even for just 1 day a week, they informed us that they could not allow our children to swim because it would be too expensive. When we asked why it would be too expensive, the reply was that the water would have to be changed each time the Negroes had used it. I informed them that in that case, segregation was a luxury that they could ill afford. Father John Garone, a Catholic priest who was white, owned a station wagon. He started taking black youth to nearby Charlotte to swim in a so-called Negro pool. Some of the city officials of Charlotte saw this priest swimming in the so-called Negro pool with the children and wanted to know who the white man was. The black supervisor explained that he was a priest who brought some black children to swim. The city officials angrily stated that they didn't care whether he was a priest or not. He was white, and they had segregation of the races in Charlotte, so they barred the priest from the so-called colored pool. Again, the children were without a safe place to swim. Chapter 25. Decision to picket the swimming pool. I called a meeting of our branch for the NAACP and reported our experience at the City Council. The meeting was charged with anger. I asked the group to support direct action against the pool. The vote was unanimous in favor. The young people were thrilled. Now we were really going to shake things up. For total effectiveness, we needed the element of surprise. Subsequently, the group gave me the authority to start the protest without further consultation. I could call the group to action whenever I deemed the time to be appropriate. This was done in order to neutralize the usefulness of any informer who may have infiltrated our group. It was customary for the racist power structure to plant informers in Afro-American communities. Through the spying of these traitors, the bigots were informed of all secretive activity in black communities. This system gave them the advantage of being able to preempt or weaken freedom activity. 8 high school youths volunteered for the protest action. I stressed that no youth from families directly dependent on local rights for survival should engage in the protest action. At a Sunday branch meeting, I explained to the group and the youths that we would start practicing for the protest the following Monday, the next day. They were told that Monday would just be a practice day, but that they should meet at my house at 2 p.m. with swimming trunks and towels to do a dry run that would approximate the real thing. By 2 o'clock, they were all there and anxious to prepare for the time when they could really go into action. I gave them the proper preparatory instructions and then explained to them that it was not a dry run, that this was the real thing. And I informed them of the necessity of conducting it in this fashion in order to catch the whites off guard. The news hyped them up, and they beamed with pride, joy, and anticipation. It seemed that a spirit of self-confidence burst forth from within them that had been pent up and restrained all of their young lives. They had a sense of the history that had been and that would never be again. Above and beyond their predecessors, they had overcome the fear that had paralyzed their forefathers. We called 2 taxis, and Dr. Perry arrived at the same time as the cabs. When the young people saw Dr. Perry, they greeted him with great elation. It was obvious that they felt up to any task. They had never before been blessed with adults willing to lead them into such an explosive conflict and willing to risk whatever price the stand would cost. I felt a great pride in them, and their gallant action gave me cause to realize that the greatest negative factor in the dehumanization of Afro-Americans was the lack of bold, thoughtful, and determined leadership. It was more than obvious that this was why white America singled out our people with such qualities for extermination. White America was cognizant of the fact that a united people with solid leadership could not be subjugated in a nation determined to maintain itself in splendor. We arrived at the pool and quickly lined up at the attendant's counter. We had our towels and trunks in our hands, and it was obvious why we had come there. We caught them off guard. A white youth who was standing near the counter ran frantically to the poolside screaming, "Niggers have come to get in our pool!" White started jumping out of the pool as if it had caught fire. The attendant asked us what we wanted. I told him that we had come to swim. He stated that Negroes could not swim there. I proceeded to explain to him that the pool had been constructed by the federal government and that we had as much right to swim there as any other American. "Not here," he retorted. After much wrangling, when they saw that we were not leaving, the white swimmers began to leave. When they were all gone, we were informed that the pool was closed for the day. News of the incident spread over the town like wildfire. When we arrived back in Newtown, our protesters danced for joy. Many of the people in the community congratulated us. The telephone rang incessantly from anxious parents and individuals wanting to know how the operation went. The young demonstrators insisted that we repeat the feat the following day. When we arrived at the pool the following day, the number of swimmers, despite the summer heat, was greatly reduced. There was a reception of hard-hat rednecks. They stood a few feet away from the entrance to the pool and waited in silence. A white woman who wore a hard hat confronted us. Her face was full of anger, and it was a sure thing that she was a plant to provoke trouble. She directly confronted me and shouted, "You niggers ain't gonna swim here, and you better leave now." The protesters stood silently behind me in line without wavering. "If you don't leave, nigger, I'm gonna slap your black face." I pointed my finger in her face and said in a voice loud enough for the men in hard hats to hear, "If you slap me, lady, it will be the last face you will ever slap on this earth." I looked straight into her eyes. She looked back at her backup bigots, and they appeared frozen in place. They failed to move to her support, and she started to back away from me. The bigots had never before seen a black man with the nerve to talk that way to a white woman. The raw courage seemed to unnerve them. We went back to the pool every day for the balance of the week, and each time we arrived, the authorities closed the pool. Chapter 26. Whipped Up Hysteria and a Klan Petition. The unfriendly media started to cover the story in a way that was sure to bring out the worst element of the racist town. In the past, it had been customary for whites to control black communities just by dropping a hint of impending terror. This time was no exception. The bigots raised their traditional and savage specter of imminent violence and terror. Placards and leaflets started to infest the town like natural growth that erupts in the season of spring. Ads appeared in the local press and whispers abounded that the Ku Klux Klan was moving into Monroe and was becoming active in a big way. The Klan had come out of the closet. Afro-American women, some of whom were members of our NAACP branch, worked in local white homes. They began to bring us information about homes wherein they had detected Klan regalia. A South Carolina bigoted preacher called Catfish Cole was making frequent trips and holding meetings designed to inflame local white supremacists. The local press announced a petition campaign sponsored by the KKK, wherein a table had been set up on the courthouse square. The petition demanded that Dr. A.E. Perry and Robert Williams, members of the communist-inspired NAACP, be driven from the town, never to return again. The local press claimed that the Klan had collected 3,000 signatures during the first week. I went to the square. A man was attending a table and collecting signatures. I approached the table and inquired what the petition was all about. Because I was a black person, the bigot seemed somewhat uncomfortable in explaining the meaning of what he was doing. It is a petition to drive that Dr. Perry and Robert Williams out of town. What have they done? I asked with an innocent voice. Negroes and white folks have always lived in peace here, and now they are trying to stir up trouble. They are communists, and the communists are out to destroy our country. Do you know this fellow, Robert Williams? I asked solemnly. No, but I know he's trying to make trouble for all of us. Don't you think that it is dangerous to try to drive people out of town that you don't even know? He nervously fidgeted with the papers on the table. He was sensing that I was in opposition to the petition campaign. For your information, I am Robert Williams, and I want you to know that you've got a right to circulate your petition, but you're going to meet with some serious trouble when and if you ever try to enforce it. The Klansman turned red in the face and lost his voice. He seemed devastated as I walked away. Chapter 27. Group Organized for Self-Defense. The following week, while we were holding a meeting at the community center, Dr. Perry's wife called and asked him to hurry home. She was frightened because she had received a call wherein an individual who identified himself as a Klansman had threatened to blow up the house. Dr. Perry was a young Catholic physician who had attended the needs of the community regardless of whether the people could afford to pay. He was very popular and well-liked in the community. He was selected as a special target because whites considered him an uppity nigger, and his living standard was better than most. Because he was a medical doctor, the bigots thought him to be the only black capable of leadership. We closed down the meeting. I suggested that we go home armed and meet at Doc's house. I went home, got my Luger, and hurried to Perry's house. I was shocked when I arrived at his modern ranch-style home with its spacious, well-kept lawn. Cars were everywhere, parked along the road and in the driveway. Men were milling all around the exterior of the house, and many were inside. I later learned that when Dr. Perry's wife, Bertha, called my wife and informed her of the threat, Mabel called Azalea Johnson, and they both proceeded to call other wives to inform them and ask them to pass the word to others. When I approached the group, they gave out loud applause. The men were armed with sundry weapons. In times past, such a threat from the Klan would have sent black people fleeing to their homes in fear, extinguishing all lights and cringing in terror. No one counted, but it was estimated that perhaps 60 men had turned up. I explained that such an undisciplined group with so many arms constituted a dangerous situation. Voices in the group called for organization. I was caught off guard when there was a clamor that since I was president of the NAACP, it was only natural that I assume leadership of the armed group. Reluctantly, I accepted the position, and we began to make our plans for self-defense. Both the local and Charlotte media reported that Klan meetings were drawing hundreds of bigots in the county. Finally, they reported thousands in attendance at the rallies. Things were moving very fast. Klansmen started making forays into our community. Within a few weeks, as many as 18 black women had been struck by objects thrown from cars that passed in the night. John McDowell and I were sitting in his car in front of my house one night when we saw a carload of young white boys pass by and throw a bottle from a car that struck a black woman. We chased the car and got the license number. At our insistence through the NAACP, the boys were brought to court. The judge asked them why they were in the Negro community at night. They explained that they were just playing and were out for some fun. He fined them $50 and explained that as explosive as the situation was, it was extremely dangerous for them to be over there, and the next time they wanted to have fun, they should realize that it would be safer for them to strike a policeman on Main Street. Tension rose to the point that Klan motorcades invaded our community, with some shots fired from cars that stretched for almost a mile bumper to bumper. I was forced to dance at pistol point under a streetlight in a black community. A group of black ministers appeared before the county officials and appealed to them to stop the Klan from terrorizing black women and children. The authorities informed the pleading black ministers that the Klan had as much right to organize as our NAACP, and they flatly refused to take any action against the terrorists. Our group asked the preachers to please not beg the racist officials to stop the Klan again, because we would stop them ourselves. By now, we had about 200 black men under arms. I dressed up the titles of their occupation so that there would be no indication that we were Afro-Americans, and I applied for and got a charter from the National Rifle Association. During the swimming pool protest, we had already established a newsletter called The Crusader to get our side of the story out. It became a national and international publication. We started to equip the armed group with military surplus. We sent an appeal out through the newsletter soliciting funds to buy Army rifles. The response was terrific. Vehicles started to arrive by night, laden with heavy rifles. We also received money to purchase more ammunition. After we had exchanged gunfire with the Klan, we started to fill sandbags and got steel helmets and gas masks. I had learned from my military experience how to make Molotov cocktails, gas bombs. Dr. Perry lived on a dead-end street. The way in was the only way out. The women and children in that vicinity gathered many glass bottles. We filled them with gasoline and stuck rag wicks in the tops. We lined the gas bombs along both sides of the street. The idea was that if the Klan carried out the threat it had made to wipe us out, the bombs would be available to be thrown to create a wall of fire. The police had reported the fact of our bottles to the Monroe Journal. In an attempt to denigrate us, the Journal reported that we had made torches because we feared that the city was going to turn off the power and the colored folks were afraid of the dark. We were to be the butt of a racist joke, but little did they, the police and local white racists, realize that we had created an extensive death trap. We had been the first to introduce the Molotov cocktail to the civil rights movement. We appealed to Luther Hodges, then governor of the state of North Carolina, to protect our community from the violence of the night-riding Klan. His response was that the Klan had not been disorderly or broken any law. We appealed to President Eisenhower. There was no response from Washington. It was more than obvious that there was no 14th Amendment for us. We may as well have been a people without a government. It was an extremely demoralizing and hopeless feeling to be completely outside the realm of protection by constituted authority. We had less force of law from government than common street dogs. I had grown up listening to the horrible experiences of old black men who congregated around the neighborhood store. Their lives bore tragic scars of the black man's ordeal of living in racist America. They had not dealt with the problem of the white man's brutality. They had coped through acquiescence. Now a new generation had come on the scene, and I had been designated to be their leader. I had an opportunity to make a difference, and I was determined to turn things around no matter what the cost might be. Deep down in my heart, I knew that timidity would invigorate oppression and tyranny. In the summer of 1957, we formed the defense perimeter around the area encompassing Dr. Perry's home in the wake of continuing threats from the Klan. We slept out of doors behind sandbags while some men walked guard. We never relaxed our vigil. We established a communication system by telephone and gunshots. The system was so set up that in case of Klan sightings, shots would be fired, men would arm themselves and rush to the defense area, and our wives would start serial calling on the phone. Becoming alarmed at our extensive organizing and the growing strength and militancy of our movement, the racist forces united against us. In midsummer 1957, the KKK made one big attempt to crush our rebellious spirit. A mammoth motorcade of armed, hooded Klansmen invaded our community and headed straight for the area where Dr. Perry lived. We met fire with fire. Our return gunfire caused them to break rank, and they scurried to get out of our community. These night riders, who had traditionally struck terror in the hearts of our people, had shown the yellow side of their bellies and had fled in terror from a confrontation wherein their intended victims had managed to create a level playing field in the game of violence. The philosophy of the deadly deterrent worked wherein constituted authority and law had failed. They had no stomach for evenly matched combat. They stopped raiding our community. After this clash, the same officials who had stated that the Klan had as much right to organize and demonstrate as our NAACP passed a city ordinance in an emergency session banning the night riders from Monroe without a special permit from the chief of police. At the time of our clash with the Klan, only 3 black publications, the Afro-American, the Norfolk Journal and Guide, and Jet magazine, reported the fight. Jet carried some pictures of the self-defense guard. Our fight occurred 2 weeks before the famous clash between the Lumbee Indians and the Klan. We had driven the KKK out of our county, and it went into the Indian territory where it was also repelled. The national press played up the Indian Klan fight. Evidently, they did not consider that incident a great threat. The Indians were a tiny minority, and the nation could laugh at the incident as a sentimental joke. But the media did not want black people to get the impression that this was an effective way to deal with the Klan. The white press maintained a complete blackout concerning the Monroe fight.
Katherine Massey Book Club. We will leave it there. We'll pick up chapter 28. One of the reasons got our crown back. Biography Kings. One of the reasons we should be reading nonfiction. We, victims of white supremacy, people classified as black are very ignorant about pretty much everything that is constructive, particularly what white supremacy racism is, how it works. When you read nonfiction, you can go and check these sources. So he says, hey, when we, black people in Monroe, North Carolina, clashed with the Ku Klux Klan, white press didn't talk about this, contributing to many non-white people's thought process, incorrect thinking that, hey, black people are chumps, we're lame, we're cowardly, you've never fought back, white people just come and lump us up and beat us up whenever they want to, and we don't do nothing, and we just turn the other cheek. That is not true. White people have done great work deleting, omitting, lying about the history of resistance to white supremacy racism. Pitiful though it has been, but there has been lots of resistance, armed resistance. You can access JET online pretty easily. I think the Afro-American, the Norfolk Journal and Guide, maybe not. If you're in Virginia, you probably can. If you're in Virginia, you might be able to easily access all three. But JET magazine, I think, pretty much, if you can get on your phone, device, wherever, you should be able to access JET magazine to see what did they print in the summer of 1957. And if my memory is correct, summer of 1957, that is also a few days, weeks before Little Rock, Arkansas was so-called integrated. So important for a number of reasons. Eisenhower would be asked many times, are you going to protect the Negro? Are you going to protect the Negro? Anyway, but that would be one that you can research and see what are those, and especially if the black publications were the only ones that really talked about this, that might be something to investigate, especially if you have connections to North Carolina. For sure, you should want to see that. Black people saying, oh no, the Klan is not going to run roughshod in the Carolinas. We're not going to have Wilmington again. We're going to say something about this. In fact, even what a comparison. Look at the number of books and projects, documentaries that they have on the coup in Wilmington, North Carolina. That happened in the 19th century, 1800s. How many books and projects do they have about Robert F. Williams and these other black males, veterans, black males and black females, because it seemed like it was everybody was involved, but all these black people in Carolina battling the Klan. That's way more current 20th century happenings, and up until recently, some of those people involved were still with us. So, one to think about. Anyway, number to dial, 720-716-7300, the code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I cannot stress enough, wow, to be reading this book at this moment with, last week we had the military intelligence files, and then we come back around this week and the detailed, now we know the white people had their snitches and finks and informants, and so we planned to have snitches and finks and informants all in the group, and so this was the way that we sought to work around that. Wow. Wow. That is the first time that I've read any sort of material of this time period where it's, we know we had snitches and finks, and not, we're going to root them all out and kill them and drop squad them, and you don't coon and snitch for what? We already know we're here, they're here, so we will just devise a code so that it will neutralize their effectiveness at thinking. Wow. The great Robert F. Williams. Mabel Williams section still to come. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I will say, I'm so glad I said this is our mandatory read. Wow. This is our mandatory read. I'll make sure to keep saying it. You listen to the cows at all. You should listen to this book. Read, get the book even, follow along. Wow, you will learn so much. Really important person, and someone that I think most of us are not very informed about. Even many of us who live in North Carolina. Hey, you can do this. Next time you bump into a black person who lives in, maybe was born in North Carolina, ask them, are you aware Robert F. Williams, Mabel Williams, they have a brand new double memoir. Do you have it? Have you read it? Have you heard about it? You seen it on YouTube? You heard somebody on a podcast talking about it? If the answer is no to all of the above, reading nonfiction is more important than watching television. The email untiljustice@gmail.com. Two quick things I'll say, then we'll get to callers' emails. One, I neglected to say at the beginning that documentary, Dear Senator, about the younger Jesse Helms Jr., senator, race soldier. They said Monroe, North Carolina was very, very segregated. Gonna put it out there 2 times. Dose. Lie. Why is that a lie? Well, I'm gonna just get back to Robert F. What Robert F. done told us repeatedly. He said that the white men in North Carolina, just like Strom Thurmond in South Carolina, they had a thing for dark oak. They bragged about raping black females, came back in front of black males. I slept with your daughter. What you think about that, nigga? I slept with your wife, Leroy. What you think about that? I slept with your mother, Jamal. What you think about that? He said they came back and bragged to them about all this. And then back he said they put the vice, the narcotics, the whorehouse. They put that in the Negro section, which I've heard about 1 billion times, and they love to come over to the Negro side of town. That ain't no so-called segregation, separation. That is the system of white supremacy racism. Again, if this was segregation, we wouldn't have read no Dear Senator about Strom Thurmond. Separate. Even Robert F. said his dad worked with a white man on the railroad. He didn't say separate. You got to be on the Negro rail car and I got to be. No, we work together. Just, you ain't gonna get no money. Robert F. said he worked with a white guy. Stop lying. Mr. Fuller told us about that word. Segregation. We were separate. Stop lying. Stop raping all these black females and children. Anywhoodles. The other portion, those informants, man, so we got the military intelligence file last week, and then this week we come back with the informants amongst civilians. He mentioned the White Citizens Council. When you talk about so-called informants, snitches, finks, you have FBI informants. Okay, I told you with Tennessee, Memphis, Ernest Withers, he was ME338R Ghetto. There were 337 informants before he, just in Memphis, Tennessee. That's just FBI informants. The local police in Memphis and Monroe, they would have their own snitches. He mentioned the White Citizens Council. That's just a group of racist civilians. Now, they might be members of the police, FBI, prosecutors, whatever, but this is not a federal or state entity. This is a private racist organization that does the same thing. We will go out and get snitches, spies, finks, informants, pressure, practice racism, terrorize, all kinds of things. But this is a private entity where they have their own records. We've heard about, they have whole books about these white citizens councils in places like Mississippi, North Carolina, other places, Tennessee, other places where they have their own files and what have you. So when you talk about thinks and, oh man, they're going to have surveillance and snitches and all of that, you probably can't even fathom, like, the layers of surveillance that white people have. And that's not even counting all the technology that would be the case now, 21st century. Block cameras, license plate readers, facial recognition, social media, all the rest of it. Like, man, ain't going to be no secrets. Again, why Neely Fuller Jr. say, all that four-wallism is not going to work. Anywho, let's see. Get to the folks who dialed in. Make your FOIA request. When you read material like this, oh yes, get those FOIA requests so we can learn a little bit about, see how many informants did they have in Monroe, at least get a ballpark figure. Same way like for Memphis or Chicago, places like that. How many snitches did they have operating in Monroe in this time period? Let's see. Folks who dialed in, let me get the switchboard, see if folks have commentary, and then get some of the emails as well. Let's see. I'll call her 5962. If you had commentary, should be with us.
Yes, sir. May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I just noted a couple of different things here from chapter 22. I thought it was very interesting that him talking to this black non-commissioned officer about wanting to request mass, and it just showed the level of, I don't know if it was necessarily fear from the rest of his chain of command trying to talk him out of going to talk to the commanding officer, the post general, but definitely trying to protect themselves where, hey, you can't get your Marine under control and do what he's supposed to do. So everybody looking out for their own ratings, especially when you think of the power structure of, white supremacy included in the Marines. So I thought that was interesting. I thought it was sad that he eventually gets basically duped into thinking that, hey, if I go ahead and don't go along with putting my request out, my complaint out, that I can get what I wanted, which was just to be moved to the information services. And then they just turn around and put him out of the Marines altogether with an other than honorable discharge purposely to make sure that he doesn't get the full benefits of his GI Bill. So I thought that was sad. The next thing that I noted was in chapter 23 where he starts to, basically he says, hey, I've been put out of the military, it is what it is, but I still have my black self-respect and I'm going to do everything I can do to combat this racism, white supremacy on another front as best as I can. And just starting to see areas of where he can help as much as he possibly can by taking over the NAACP that appears to be crumbling under pressure, and going down to the local pool hall to not get your regular everyday, I guess, run-of-the-mill members of the NAACP, where he wants some more radical, if you want to use that term, or some more people who are willing to put up a fight, some people who are willing to put up a struggle. And then the last thing that I noted was that that last part where he talks about how the media didn't cover their resistant struggle against the Klan who was coming into their community armed, terrorizing women and children, and the media doesn't cover that. They ran them out of their area only to another area where they were also fought. But that skirmish was in the media and amplified, kind of to get you to stay low and stay meek and not want to fight as a black person. And that's all I have.
Much obliged, sir. Again, the importance of black journalists, especially at that time period where they might have been the only source to cover many of the events of the so-called civil rights movement, or just efforts to counter racism, white supremacy, or even sometimes acts of white supremacy racism. Sometimes it was black journalists were the only outlets who had information on what took place. So, for sure. I'd also say for the or less than honorable discharge of Robert Williams, and they run the old racist trick on him. I was thinking about it like, man, if Robert F., white general, is talking to him and he says, well, why don't you rescind your request and I'll be able to get you sent off so you can do your journalism studies and such, and we won't have to make a big stink about this. Nobody will have a so-called black mark on their record. Now, if Robert F. says, well, no, I don't want to rescind it because, something might happen, and I rescind it, and then down the road they write me up for something, and I get in trouble, and just, no, I'll go ahead and keep this in until, things have actually progressed, and once I've transitioned and all the rest of it, then I'll go ahead and rescind, but I'm going to keep it in for the time being. If he had tried to go that route, I could easily see the general saying, what? You calling me a liar, boy? You saying you don't trust me, boy? Oh, I see you one of them old doggy soldiers. See, I'm going to get you out of here, boy. Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to offer you an olive branch, and you up here calling me a liar and saying you don't trust that I'm going to be the right. Okay, I see how you... I could see it easily, and you end up in the exact same spot that he ended up in anyway. So, you just got... We're in a system of white supremacy racism, and they have much more power than us. Frequently we're in situations where we just got limited choices. I just don't, in that predicament, I just don't see an option where this would end up working out in a way where he goes to journalism school, there are no repercussions, he gets his GI Bill, he's working for WRAL. There's no way in the world that's going to happen. I just don't see that. If somebody knows the procedure for that, please share. Again, much obliged, good sir. Let's see. Some of the folks who wrote in untiljustice@gmail.com. Let's see. Greetings, Gus, listeners, callers. Chapter 22. Request mass and separation from the Corps. Afro-American Marine Sergeant, procedure called request mass. He wished me good luck and disappeared into the night. General Good, will see you now. If all you want is to go to Quantico, I can arrange that for you. Sign the petition for withdrawal. A scowl appeared. I'm going to see to it that you are drummed out. We can sometimes obtain help from other victims in the workplace, but in the end, we still must be united independent. My father always extolled that he would not have completed college during the 1950s without the GI Bill. I'm sure many more white people can say that than non-white people. There were a few non-white people who were able to take advantage, but not many. Also, for the sergeant who told him about this request mass, I understand his trepidation about this as well, because he said, hey, I'm close to retirement, and I didn't get me messed up and all this, and mess up my pension and benefits and all the rest of it. Like, get your black hind parts on away from me. This is a little nugget that I can share with you. Other than that, I'm going to pray for you, and deuces. Right on. Hey, that's about the best that you can expect. Even right now, 2026, like, hey, that is above and beyond the call of duty, in my opinion. Black self-respect. We are united independent. I'll help another victim out to the degree that I can, but I mean, hey, you might be a snitch too. Let's see, and incidentally, I think the older black person, I think he did say that I've kind of heard about you, like, oh yeah, they've been talking about you, old troublemaking dude. Yeah, make sure you don't hang out around me. Let's see. Next, chapter 23. Returned to Dixie to join the struggle. It appeared that my government and my country had declared war on me. But after much reflection, I came to feel that my country had declared de facto war on me at birth. When I had been born black, Mr. Fuller used to say that the war was waged on you before we were born. True. And we do not have a country, that possessive adjective. We don't have a government. The government is the system of white supremacy. The country is the system of white supremacy. And war was declared. Racism, white supremacy is war. And the war was declared when you were born, not born black, born within a system of white supremacy racism. The problem is not you being classified as black. The problem is white people practicing racism. 2. Before the Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka Supreme Court desegregation decision, Supreme Court decision drastically altered the peaceful coexistence attitude. The Ku Klux Klan and white citizens' councils made it their business to locate any NAACP chapter in their vicinity. First meeting I attended. After joining, my name was suggested as a delegate to represent the group. VGQ, I am not sure at any time that peaceful existed in any manner. True. Chapter 24, voted president of the NAACP. 1. I was voted president of the branch with no members. Pool Hall, I am the new president of the NAACP, and from this day forward, these white people are going to catch hell in this town. I want you guys to join and help me. I signed 6 members right there on the pool table. Mr. Williams was truly a man of the people. He was able to see the value of all non-white people regardless of their status. 2. Summer of 1956, 3 young black boys lost their lives swimming in unsupervised ponds. It was shocking to the entire community. White swimming pool at a place called Lake Lee. I bet you that's for General Lee of the Confederacy, Civil War. This pool had been constructed by the Works Project Administration with federal funds. Blacks were barred from swimming there. Swimming pools and victims have been a continual area of discussion on the COWS. See the Katherine Massey book club, Packing Them In, an archaeology of environmental racism in Chicago. Dr. Sylvia Hood Washington, who was also a guest on the COWS, Dying to Swim, Race Riots, and the Red Summer of 1919. Also, we had specifically a white guest from North Carolina as a guest on the COWS just last summer. What did we talk about? White supremacy, racism, and swimming pools in North Carolina. And this is 2025. We are like legit talking 75 flipping years after what you hear with Robert F. Williams, and is the exact same mother flipping problem. Matter of fact, we had to ask the white guest. I was trying to get his name. I was doing so much because so much going on. Like, oh my God, informants, snitches, White Citizens Council, the swimming pools. But the white guest, we had to ask him in North Carolina even. We had to ask him repeatedly. So did you, white man, get to swim? He said, oh, right. He was so hot, and buckets and buckets and buckets. And we finally went, hey, you didn't answer that question. Did you get to swim in North Carolina this summer? After all the yes, I did. We went to the beach, see, because they ain't got a swimming pool. That's what I wrote my whole report about. They ain't got no swimming pools in North Carolina. They didn't close them all down, so we had to go to the beach. But yes, we did go to the beach, and we pulled out the inflatable rubber ducky, and we had a grand old time, and there were no black people. But yes, I did go to the beach. Progress, they say. Progress. Number 3, Father John Garone, a Catholic priest who is white, owned a station wagon, he started taking black youth to nearby Charlotte to swim in a so-called Negro pool. Some of the city officials of Charlotte saw the priest swimming in the so-called Negro pool with the children and wanted to know who the white man was. I have mixed emotions about a white Catholic. Oh my God! When I heard that, my first thought was, not all white peoples is racist. That was my first thought. I didn't even get to the, oh wait a minute, my verses touched the youth like Catholic priests. Oh Lord, you don't think he was doing, oh Lord, not in the Jeffrey Epstein, not in the Jimmy Savile, not in the Boy Scouts, oh Lord, no, Chapter 25. I could call the group to action whenever I deemed the time to be appropriate. This was done in order to neutralize the usefulness of any informer who may have infiltrated our group. No youth from the families directly dependent on local whites for survival should engage in the protest action. Remarkable that he anticipated informants and instituted measures to mitigate their effect. I have read quite a bit of, I read about the Black Panther. We have had guests on who've written books about the Black Panther Party, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Southern Christian Leadership, SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, on and on and on. All these different groups, Black Liberation Army, on and on and on and on, Inculpate Seasway, on and on and on. I have never heard of a group of black people. We are trying to organize against racism, white supremacy. We know that there are going to be informants. So, to minimize their impact, these are the steps that we will take in terms of how we carry out actions, when we carry out actions, when the information is disseminated about all of this, like, wow, not we're going to go and, torture and figure out, what? Vontae, you a snitch? Oh, we're going to torture you. Get him. Climb up. Beat him. We're going to beat him down. You cool? We told you. You don't snitch. I've heard that lots of times. And we got other old, this actually seems like it might be halfway constructive. I mean, you still don't, totally out them, and they can still do a lot of damage, but hey, we already know that they're here, and we take steps to try to mitigate that as best we can. Wow. Let's see. And probably some of that just because he got his military intelligence file. So looking through all that, you would know, oh, okay, they got people snooping and taking pictures of my activities and all this. Oh, okay. All of this will probably continue now that I've been booted. They won't even let me get a job. Okay. That's why I said, make those FOIA requests. The greatest negative factor in the dehumanization of African Americans was the lack of bold, thoughtful, determined leadership. BGQ, I'm going to have to think about whether this is a true statement. Well, all of the leaders of Afro-Americans are white. Now, I would say, to be bold and thoughtful, you would have to be somewhat informed. And like I just said, I think Robert F. Williams, the reason that he was able to come up with some of this is because he had been in the military. He got to leave and go to California and got some little inkling of training and was trying to get more, got his military intelligence. Like, man, all of that greatly fact. Like I said last week, if there had been no World War II, and he was just stuck in Monroe with the rest of the black people with no job, and maybe he's hanging out the pool hall or whatever, working at the tobacco factory and railroad factory, whatever, being a victim of racism. Maybe he continues and does all. Now, I don't think so, because he said this week, we made the Molotov cocktails. That was based on my military training. Maybe he still fights against racism. Maybe so. I don't think it looks the way it looks as he lived, because he was in the service, even for that limited amount of time, and not, experiencing all the racism and not getting the exact training that he wanted. Even still, massive constructive impact, because he was able to learn things that he then used to fight against racism, white supremacy, and was trying to learn more. Let's see. But you can't have thoughtful, bold leadership if you're not informed. And they have done such, at this point, they have done such a job. And black people didn't even go to the library. Can you imagine that? Living in a world where you can't even step foot in the library. And even dig this, the control is so extraordinary, it seemed they didn't really have, like, explicit, no Negroes allowed at the library type thing. It seemed like they didn't even have that. So it seemed like you had so many illiterate white people like, hey, we have library, what's that? That the Negroes just, hey, they don't let us get no books, and we don't hardly have no school. All we have is a shack, and you might get hit by the railroad car getting home from school anyway, so, hey, we don't even think about going to the library. We don't even have the forethought. We've been so, Jesse Helms Sr. then beat us down and terrorized us so much, we don't even think about going to the library, which is still the case 2026. But they go to the library, and it wasn't like they had to break through the Klan and do all the rest of it. All they did was make a phone call. Can the Negroes use the library? You know, I don't think it's no rules about that. And I'm kind of illiterate myself. I don't just whatever. The library? What is a library? I don't care. Whatever, Negro. Deuces. And then they go to the library, and they just realize, what are these Negroes doing here? I ain't even ever seen a Negro here. Can y'all read? What's going on? And, I mean, wow. Just wow. All the way through. That right there might prohibit you from having bold, deep-thinking leaders because you have a group that doesn't. And matter of fact, that's the second time this year I've heard that. That's the second time this year I've heard that. That's the second time this year I've heard that about black people. We don't have thoughtful, bold leadership. And it was specifically, they said, because we don't have a literate leadership class of black people. That's what it was. That's what it was said, that black people don't have, the black leaders don't do no in-depth reading. I said all the leaders of black people are white. But even if they mean black spokespeople, whew, whew. I don't know. I have to think about that. Continuing. Number 3. Reception of hard hat rednecks. They stood a few feet away from the entrance to the pool. White women confronted us. You Negroes ain't gonna swim here. If you don't leave, Negro, I'm gonna slap your black face. I pointed my nigger in her face. If you slap me, lady, it will be the last face you ever slap on this earth. Failed to move to her support. The racist failed to move to her support. Raw courage seemed to unnerve them. We went back to the pool every day for the balance of the week, and each time we arrived, the authorities closed the pool. The role of white women in the global system of racism, white supremacy, is a significant part of this text. Are white people cowards? There is quite a bit of cowardly white behavior in this text, in my opinion. This might be one act right here. You've had a Negro under any other circumstances. If a black male gets uppity with a white, particularly you talking about putting your hands on a white woman, you supposed to be strung up, castrated. Where's your scar? We supposed to do a Sade Robinson on you. Were we still looking for all your body parts years later? A white woman she's supposed to have your testicles in a jar to show her grandchildren. Now that it's just a little bit more balanced, where I got a firearm and I got some other black people that we got firearms and we ready to roll. That is kind of cowardly in my opinion. If it had been just Rob by himself and he didn't have a firearm, y'all would have been ready to go to town. Y'all had outnumbered him 50 to 1. Y'all would have been ready to go to town. Do an Emmett on him. That's kind of cowardly in my opinion. And it was a few dragging a black through. It's a whole lot of examples in my opinion in this of cowardly behavior. You're tough. Be tough. Even the soldier who went in, what was it, the week before, where they had the black soldier and he was locked up in the stockade, and the big white troop said, I'm tough and I'm rough. Not going. He said, well, come on in if you tough then. And I guess the black troop got the best of him, the razors or whatever, and beat him down. He ran out. That's coward. You're accustomed to being a bully. You get other people who can even things out a little bit now. More, in my opinion, just my humble opinion, most of what we have read is very, very cowardly behavior. All of it. Shooting a pistol and making a black female dance, and that's cowardly behavior. You're a racist and all the rest of it, but I mean, really? Really? We didn't hear, hey, Rob got on my nerves, so we went and got a pistol. Dance, Rob. Do the funky chicken in the street, Rob. We didn't hear that. We go get the black female. She's 89 years old and make her. That's cowardly behavior, in my opinion. Yes, racist, white supremacist for sure. That's cowardly behavior. Let's see. Chapter 26, whipped up hysteria. Afro-American women, some were members of our NAACP branch, worked in local white homes, bring us information about homes when they had detected Klan regalia. South Carolina bigoted preacher called Catfish Cole was making frequent trips and holding meetings designed to inflame local white supremacists. Local press announced a petition campaign sponsored by the KKK demanded that Dr. A.E. Perry, Robert F. Williams, members of the communist-inspired NAACP, be driven from the town, never to return again, collected 3,000 signatures. I thought they had said before there was only about 3,000 people in the town. This was at that time. That's what they said in the documentary. The Senator No. Jesse Helms, they said it was 4 Republicans and 2,996 Democrats. They said it was about 3,000 people in Monroe. They got every person in the town to sign the petition. We're going to get rid of Rob. We're going to get your hind parts out of here. Dang. They didn't even have IG or Twitter to help organize. They just had to go out word of mouth. Oh my God. Man, you cannot be ignorant about white people. He said, excellent example of the Voltron affect the religion of white supremacy. I guess that was preacher Catfish Cole. He was not like the Catholic priest who was taken to the pool. Catfish said, I don't do that. There's no Negro field trips. 2, I went to the square. A man was attending a table and collecting signatures. I approached the table and inquired what the petition was all about. What have they done? I asked with an innocent voice. Do you know this fellow Robert Williams? I asked solemnly. Don't you think it is dangerous to try to drive people out of town that you don't even know? The importance of staying in the question lane when dealing with suspected racists. Neely Fuller Jr. I will say, this era, in particular this subject matter, I could even see how asking questions here might... What kind of uppity Negro is you? Who are you with all these questions about Robert Williams? Man, we need to add your name. I could easily see that you coming in with all these questions. What you got to do with it anyway? Let me start asking some questions. 27. No one counted, but it was estimated that perhaps 60 men had turned up. I explained that such an undisciplined group with so many arms constituted a dangerous situation. Absolutely. You step on my foot. Voices in the group called for organization. Our group asked the preachers to please not beg the racist officials to stop the Klan again because we would stop them ourselves. Great line. We had about 200 black men under arms, got a charter from the National Rifle Association, classic, established a newsletter called The Crusader, which you can download, to get our side of the story out. It became a national and international publication, equipped the armed group with military surplus, sent an appeal soliciting funds to buy Army rifles. This, in some respects, reminded me of a more conservative version of the Not Effing Around coalition. An all-black group is arming itself and demanding change. I don't know if that's an exact correlation. More current group. I felt like a lot of what they were doing was kind of non-constructive bravado, like they were just kind of going around and marching. It didn't seem like there was a direct threat that they were seeking to neutralize, like they were talking about racism and all that, but it seemed like a lot of public antics and demonstration that would attract attention, where it seems Robert F. and his group, they were doing more direct, they're going to drag Benny Montgomery's corpse, we're going to organize to go stop that. Like it seems like much more organized. We're going to get these Molotov cocktails and have them pre-positioned. If the Klan comes to attack, bam, we're ready. That's it. Now, maybe the NFAC, maybe they were doing that, but that is not my recollection from a few years back of the types of things that I was reading about. Now, it might have been racists controlling what activities got reported, but it just seemed like a lot of non-constructive marching that I thought would lead to charges and then being quickly neutralized, which is what happened. 2, I had learned from my military experience how to make Molotov cocktails, gas bombs, named after Soviet Foreign Minister Borishev Molotov when they were used in the 1939 war between the Soviet Union and Finland. It is thought that the bottle bombs were first used in Ireland in 1922. See inside the explosive history of the Molotov cocktail. That seems kind of poor man's James Bond type thing that we talked about before with Columbine and Michael Swango, some of these different books that you can go, the Alchemist cookbook, where you can go and blow up, the Anarchist cookbook, excuse me, where you can go out and blow up the world. Seems like would fit right. They probably got some great Molotov cocktail recipes in there. Anarchist cookbook. 3, the journal reported that we had made torches because we feared that the city was going to turn off the power on the colored folks, and colored folks were afraid of the dark. We were able to be the butt of a racist joke. See the C.O.W.S interview with Souls of White Jokes, How Racist Humor Fuels White Supremacy by Raul Perez. We appealed to Luther Hodges, then governor of the state of North Carolina, to protect our community from the violence of the night-riding Klan. His response was that the Klan had not been disorderly or broken any law. Governor Hodges pardoned the black children in the kissing case, but refused to apologize. Not sure what an apology would have accomplished in this instance anyway, would have even been sincere. 5. Midsummer 1957, the KKK made one big attempt to crush our rebellious spirit. Mammoth motorcade of armed, hooded Klansmen, we met fire with fire. They scurried to get out of our community. I think that might be cowardly too. These night riders who had traditionally struck terror in the hearts of our people had shown the yellow side of their bellies and had fled in terror from a confrontation wherein their intended victims had managed to create a level playing field in the game of violence. Are racist white supremacists cowards? At least in these instances, to me, I would say yes. It reminds me very much of Dill and Reb, the same cowardly spirit. We only like to fight. We're the only ones who got guns. Now we are tough as tough can be. We got so much bass in our voice. It's like we are 10 feet tall, 5,000 pounds. I dare Michael Scholes to say something. I'm tough. That's the same spirit. That's the same. As soon as whoa. This might, as a matter of fact, the duel. Didn't he say that? Let's have a duel. Mano a mano. I like it when it's 50 on 1. I like it when it's 10 against 1. I like it when it's 500 against 1. I like it when we got 50 guns and you got a toothpick. That's what it is. Yeah. I'm tough. I'm the man. They don't come and it's just 1-on-1. Me and you. Matter of fact, they were outnumbered at the pool. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what else you call this, but it seems kind of cowardly to me. I'm in agreement with Rob. It seems very cowardly. If you tough all day long. I like to fight. You win some, you lose some. We came to fight. We didn't come to tuck tail and run. We came down here, you niggas are being uppity. You got guns, we got guns. We called in some more boys. You get some casualties, we get some casualties, we do it again next week. Not no, whoa. They got to go, we got to retreat. That's coward. That's coward. Let's see. 6. Afro-American, the Norfolk Journal, and Guide and Jet magazine reported the famous clash between the Lumbee Indians and the Klan. The national press played up the Indian-Klan fight. Evidently, they did not consider that incident a great threat. I found this section fascinating. I have a lot of Black and Lumbee tribe family members who lived in North Carolina and were alive during this period. Those troublemakers, they were probably out fighting the Klan. I'm going to ask them if they remember the Klan incident. The Lumbee tribe has been controversial since it was not federally recognized until recently and thus deprived of the government benefits afforded tribes who are officially recognized as indigenous. They have been trying to achieve this recognition since 1888. Other federally recognized native tribes had fought against their recognition. This all changed in 2025 when President Trump added legislation to a bill affording them federal status. They were all in for Trump in the 2024 1964 election. See, 65 years after Battle of Hayes Pond, Lumby's recall fight that pushed the KKK out. Sarah Nagum, 2023. Border Belt and the one tribe Trump raves about is getting a big win and fueling controversy. 2025. And we'll pause there since we didn't get to the rest of it. My notes on this section, I said you should check the black press for some of those clippings to see 1957 what was going down. He used the word denigrate, that the press, once they got wind that Negroes were fighting back, that they tried to denigrate us. We talked about that word earlier this year in the context of minstrelsy. You can even see it in the word denigger us. That's kind of the context of how that word is used, the blackening up and all these Negroes. Let's see. Chapter 26, let's see. That stealing of information when some of the black females, I've heard this 2 times in the month of July, where, and it was black females both times, where because they worked in or were in close proximity to what was happening, they were able to report back to black people like, oh man, the white people are getting their Klan stuff together and they're coming to get y'all. Matter of fact, it was with Memphis, where it was a black female. I think it was either her husband or boyfriend, one of the two, was on the police department, and she ended up going through his pocket and saw that he had all these pictures of these black people, and she asked, she said, who are these? Why do you, it was black people that she knew, black men. She said, why do you have pictures of these black dudes? He said, oh, if anything happens at the rally, we're going to kill them on sight. She's like, oh my God, what in the world? And she went and told them, so they didn't go to the rally. And they still got blamed, even though they weren't there. But that sort of thing. Lots of that seems to have happened over the years. The pool, again, we've heard about this so many times in terms of just black people, and one even to die. He said 3 black boys died that summer. That's this summer. We just reported that. We had Massey in South Carolina. Just took the swim course where she said it's been all these. That's not even counting Nolan Wells, Daniel Irving. That's not even counting those 2. It's been all kinds of deaths of black and non-white children all summer long. Exact same reasons. Say it really going all the way. Black people, we don't want you to know how to swim if you are a slave. And then we don't want you in the pool even if you are not a so-called slave. System of white supremacy that we would blow up the pool or close the public pool as opposed to have Negroes swimming with us. For sure in North Carolina, like, all they got is pig farms and no pools. That's what I think of with North Carolina. Pig farms and no pools. Pig farms and no pools. No pools. And tobacco. But like, am I missing something? What else? North Carolina. Am I missing something? Let's see. I'm going to have to check Father John Garone to see if there are any allegations of sexual impropriety, especially with the children. I'm also going to have to confirm to see if Lake Lee is named after Robert E. Lee of the Civil War, although I cannot imagine it being named after anyone else. Let's see. The segment when he talked about when they went and so-called integrated the library and he got black veteran James Byrd, I did think about that. Like, now, it was pretty innocuous, no one harmed, no bloodshed, no fisticuffs, and Robert F. did go with him. It's not like he just sent him off by himself, like, oh yeah, go to the library, hook it up, and let me know how it went when you get back. It's not like he did it that way. But man, given the time period, I was thinking, like, shouldn't you have told him in advance? Now, look here, Mr. Byrd. Ain't no niggers been to the library before. That's going to change today. You need the information. I called them and they said that niggers could attend. I'm not just throwing you to the racist wolves. I'm going to go with you. But just so you know, ain't no niggers been to the library, I don't think. We're going to change that today. Now, if you still down, let's do it. It would seem like that might be the correct way to do it. He said he didn't want to make him nervous or whatever else, but just, man, like, if they had started wigging out in there, and then he doesn't know until later, like, oh, they're wigging out because ain't no niggers been to the library. Man, what you do? at least so I could, be aware, like, this might go sideways, we're a system of racism anyway, so anything could happen regardless, but just, this is kind of a momentous thing. At least let me make sure I got my good suit on and polished in case the newspaper come, we get arrested, and like that. Just, wow. Anyway, I'm glad it worked out well. He got the info. White women run the library. Then and now. Let's see. So he joins the NAACP group in Monroe. He's going to be the president. When he went to the pool hall, I thought that was great. He said he was getting a different type of member in the group. He said he signed 6 members right there on the pool table. Others stated as soon as they got $2, they too would join. I didn't get to do the inflation calculator yet. $2? $2. That's your black male privilege. $2. Even if you think $2 in 1957 is $50 now. Whew. I get them $2. I'm gonna be right there. I'm gonna go out and save. I'm gonna do a little overtime next week. I get them $2. Black male privilege. The other teaspoon of black male privilege, he said some of them, they picked the fake names to join the NAACP. Others, they put their wives' names on the sheet. That's another one I might be upset about, because they go and they audit the NAACP roster, and then they go and see Lakeisha Johnson, and she get fired, and I said, I don't join it, I ain't even with her. And then Leroy comes over, look here, babe, They came to the pool hall, you see, and Robert F., he kind of got that charisma, and so I signed up, but I didn't want to get in trouble, so I put Lakeisha down. I don't know how I feel, like, man, even if I didn't lose my job, like, what? You didn't put my name, so I just, man, Leroy sleeping on the couch that night, maybe the rest of the week, like, if you don't go and put something, let's see, I don't know what the upper crust of the black so-called community is. There is no black community in a system of racism, especially if Jesse Helms Sr. can come and drag your sister or mother or daughter or wife off your porch and drag her down the street, and there's nothing can be done about it. You do not have a community. You don't even have a library. He said when he went to get a job at Douglas Aircraft in Charlotte, they turned him down and tried to have the federal attorney indict him because he used his honorable Army discharge to try to get a job instead of his more recent undesirable discharge. Like, wow. Here's what white people are not ignorant about racism. We are punitive all the time. This Nickwit tried to pull a slick one, we gonna get you. Dang. Wow, Rob had a tough time. Let's get to it. If you have other thoughts or commentary, write them down. We will get back after the second audio segment. Getting to the meat of the counter violence at the heart of this here project. The Biography Kings, proudly reading the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams. Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy, Audio Segment 2.
Chapter 28, Dr. Perry's Case. After violence had failed to crush our spirit and destroy our movement, the racist terrorists shifted their efforts to the courts and utilized kangaroo law. Dr. Perry, our NAACP chapter's vice president, was indicted on a trumped-up charge of performing an abortion on a white woman. The night he was arrested, he had answered a phony emergency call to his office, which was located on the outer edge of the downtown area. Some blacks who happened to be passing by saw him being taken into custody. They sounded the alarm, and the word swept through the black community like wildfire. Consequently, throngs of Afro-Americans marched on the police station and the jail. When I arrived on the scene, an angry throng had filled the police station, and the crowd spilled out into the streets, blocking it. Another group had descended on the jail and were threatening to break down the doors unless Doc was released. I made my way through the crowd in the police station and asked the nervous chief, A.A. Mahoney, why Doc had been arrested and what the charges were. Chief Mahoney informed me that the charge was criminal abortion. I asked him the amount of the bond, and he told me that it didn't matter because we wouldn't be able to make it. I asked him a second time, and he informed me that the bond was $7,500. That was a very high bond, deliberately set so that Dr. Perry would have to remain in jail overnight. There were many reports that Klansmen were waiting on the outskirts of town and obviously planned to lynch him. I asked Chief Mahoney for permission to use the telephone. He nodded and pointed to it in the affirmative. The crowd was reaching a zenith of anger and was becoming more menacing. I called J. Ray Shute, a white Unitarian who had become a friend and was responsible for my converting to the Unitarian religion. He was also a local developer, considered to be one of the city fathers, and was considerably wealthy. I explained to him what had happened and that the town was about to burst into flames. He asked to speak to the chief. Chief Mahoney said that Mr. Shute wanted the two of us to come to his house and to bring the bond for him to sign. When we arrived at the Shute home, Chief Mahoney was afraid to ring the doorbell. As Mr. Shute invited us in, Mahoney removed his hat and lined up behind me. His entire demeanor had changed. His arrogance had faded, and his hands trembled as he passed the bond papers to be signed. Mr. Shute sat at his desk and read the charges, looked up at the chief and said, "I'm tired of all this racial trouble around here. It is getting so the colored people can't live in peace because of the bigots. I want it to stop. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mr. Shute, I'll do what I can," he meekly replied. Dr. Perry was immediately released, and the tension was diffused. I am certain that it would have been a very bloody night if he had not been released. While awaiting trial and being under bond, Dr. Perry's political activities were greatly curtailed. Our group had suffered a grievous blow, which spread some demoralization among our people. But despite the biggest shift in tactics, we managed to keep our group together. The local people mounted a massive drive to raise funds for Dr. Perry's legal defense. Even though Dr. Perry was a Catholic physician who had refused to perform even legal abortions or to file sterilization permits for the county welfare department on grounds that such was contrary to his religious beliefs, and notwithstanding a long, fierce legal defense, he was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 5 years on a chain gang. He lost his license to practice medicine and was barred from his home in Monroe after his final release. Chapter 29. The internationally infamous kissing case. In the late fall of 1958, I received a telephone call from someone who identified himself as the mayor of Monroe. He chided that since I was so good at causing problems, he wanted to see how good I was at solving one. He informed me that a couple of colored juvenile delinquents had been jailed for molesting a white girl. He asked me to get their mothers to sign an authorization so they could be sent to reform school. When I went to see the mothers of the boys, I found to my surprise that the so-called juvenile delinquents were only 8 and 9 years old. The two, David Fuzzy Simpson and James Hanover Thompson, had been playing with a little white girl who sat on the older boy's lap and kissed him on the cheek. When she innocently informed her mother of the childish play, the mother became hysterical and began scrubbing the little girl's face with soap and water. Her father loaded his shotgun and rushed out to kill the boys. The police got there first and arrested the 2 children, charging them with attempted rape. Instead of convincing the boys' mother to agree to sign them into the reformatory, I telephoned some of my fellow officials in the local NAACP and informed them of the problem, and they all agreed that we needed to intervene on the children's behalf. We found out that a hearing was being conducted the next day, and we proceeded to the courthouse in the afternoon. When we attempted to enter the courtroom, a police officer blocked our entrance to the door and informed us that the hearing was over and that the only thing that was left to do was the sentencing. I asked where the children's mothers were and how they held a hearing without them or their accusers being there. The policeman mockingly informed me that the judge did not believe in mixing the races, so he had held a separate but equal hearing with the white child and her parents that morning. Judge J. Ham Price sentenced the 2 black boys to the state reformatory to remain there until they reached 21. This meant 12 and 13-year sentences. Once we learned of the judge's actions, I contacted Kelly Alexander, a mortician from Charlotte who presided over the North Carolina State Conference of NAACP branches, seeking help for the boys. Alexander refused to help with what he referred to as a sex case that the organization could not afford to get mixed up in. When we then appealed to the National Executive Director, Roy Wilkins, who responded in a similarly negative way. They both were more concerned with not involving the organization in a sex issue than they were in seeking justice for the 2 unjustly imprisoned young boys. Fortunately, James had an older sister who lived in Brooklyn, New York. She contacted her ward representative, and because the facts had been vaguely conveyed to her, she had him contact me to ascertain what had happened. He found the story to be unbelievable. Being a local official of the Brooklyn NAACP, he asked if I had contacted the national office. When I informed him that I had indeed, and what had transpired, he became outraged and said that he was going to personally contact Roy Wilkins. When he called back, he was greatly upset. After a few curse words, he asked me if we had a local lawyer. When I answered in the negative, he asked me if we wanted a lawyer. I explained that we could not afford to hire a lawyer. He asked me again if we wanted one, and I told him yes. He said one would call me soon. We reported the events surrounding the case in our newsletter, The Crusader, and a few days after learning of the refusal of the NAACP to help, Conrad Lynn, a militant black lawyer from New York, volunteered to help us and take the case. Some organizations there were going to join in to raise funds to help pay for legal fees. George Weissman, also from New York, called and asked if he could come with Lynn. I gladly agreed, and the next day we joyously welcomed them to Monroe. When they arrived, however, James and Fuzzy had already been tried, convicted, and sent to the Hoffman Boys Reformatory. Conrad Lynn went to talk with Hamp Price, the judge who had passed sentence on the boys. Judge Price told Lynn that he had held a separate but equal hearing. When asked what he meant by that, Judge Price told him how on the morning of the trial he had called in the white mother and daughter, the mother had made a statement, and they were sent home. And then, in the afternoon, the two Negro mothers were summoned to the court and their boys were brought in. The judge then stated to Lynn, I told them what the girl's mother had told me, and since they were guilty, I sent them up. The story slowly began to get widespread coverage by outraged reporters in both the U.S. and the overseas press. Eventually, after the foreign press started printing stories with captions like, Black children arrested for a kiss, even the national networks and the New York Times were obliged to report the story. The eyes of the world were focused on Monroe and the famous kissing case, and reporters from around the globe began to converge on Monroe. Even Joyce Eggington of the London News Chronicle asked for my help in interviewing and photographing the two boys in prison. I told her it would be impossible for a journalist to see them. Pretending to be a social worker, we went with James's mother to the Hoffman Boys Reformatory in Southern Pines, North Carolina. I hid a brownie camera in a bag of fruit we were taking for the boys. Miss Eggington said to the guards that she thought that we could have a more relaxed visit if the guards were not present. They agreed and reluctantly left the room. The moment they were gone, I pulled out my camera and began to snap pictures of them. I surprised Miss Eggington, after the initial shock of seeing me with the camera taking pictures, suggested that she put the roll of film in her pocket so that we could possibly get it out safely should the camera be discovered later. Fortunately, we were able to get the camera and the pictures out without being discovered. A few weeks after our return to Monroe and Miss Eggington's return to England, the London News Chronicle ran a front-page story of the kissing case, including the interview with the boys in the reformatory, interspersed with the pictures I had taken of them. After this story appeared, a groundswell of protest committees were formed in other countries, and criticism of the system of justice which allowed this travesty was widespread and vocal, so much so that the Voice of America began to discuss the kissing case in some of its broadcasts. But even the best propagandists of the State Department and its information services could not think of logical excuses for the jailing of 8- and 9-year-old children. The news spread across Europe. A protest petition bearing 10,000 signatures from elementary school children in Holland was sent to Miss Eleanor Roosevelt at the United Nations. Only then did the U.S. media start to express concerns about the kissing case. Some sensitive U.S. papers raised the communist specter. They accused the student petition sent to Mrs. Roosevelt as being communist propaganda, until a European paper identified the source as being orphans in a Catholic school. Now that the kissing case was becoming a cause célèbre, with interest being generated both far and near, the national office of the NAACP became intensely interested. The national leadership informed me that they were coming into the case and that we should dismiss Conrad Lynn. I explained that the national office did not understand our local sense of loyalty and that Conrad had come to our rescue when our backs were against the wall. Our branch could never be counted on to be so ungrateful as to stab him in the back. We held out for Conrad. Because of the worldwide publicity, the NAACP wanted the case so bad in order to save face that the organization offered to pay Conrad Lynn and keep him on as a co-counsel. It was also suggested that if I shifted the case up to the NAACP, there was a possibility that I could be offered the job of the soon-to-be-retired field representative. My answer was to stay put and finish the work that I had started. Gloucester B. Current, then NAACP Director of Branches, told me that I was unwittingly getting tied up with the Reds. He stated that many years previously, Lynn had been expelled from the United States Communist Party and that George Weissman was a character of the Socialist Workers' Party. My response was that I didn't give a damn if they were from hell. They had come in a time of need when our situation was desperate, and we were not playing political games. our survival will underline. After recognizing the futility of trying to get us to dump Attorney Lynn, the NAACP accepted Conrad, and together they got a state-level hearing. This initial progress was due to the mounting, widespread political pressure exerted on the state of North Carolina. The hearing was set in the adjacent county of Anson. The NAACP sent a battery of lawyers. Malcolm C.O.W.S, the North Carolina Attorney General, came personally to argue for the state. There were 2 rows of newsmen who came from newspapers as far away as Europe to cover a juvenile case of a childhood kiss. Judging by all the fanfare, anyone who unwittingly happened upon the scene might have thought that some vicious serial killer was facing the bar. The Anson County courtroom was overrun with lawyers and newsmen. Local authorities lost the ability to enforce their traditional regimen of racial segregation. North Carolina was truly under the world spotlight. With so much media present, the bigots were their best faces of deception. They were on their best conduct and out to convince the world that theirs was a just civilization based on Christian precepts that required separation of the races because God had created them differently. They had often advanced the theory that if God had meant the races to commingle, he would have made them the same color and given them the same intelligence. When the court commenced, North Carolina Attorney General C.O.W.S sprang a surprise. He bellowed out, "I want Robert Williams to take the stand." A momentary ruffle of disapproving ahs and murmurs revealed astonishment. I was sitting next to Attorney Frank Reeves of the Washington Bureau of the NAACP. He nudged me in the side and told me that I did not have to take the stand. It was more than obvious that the Attorney General had an agenda that encompassed much more than a simple hearing bearing on the legal ramifications of the incarceration of the little boys. The battery of NAACP lawyers agreed with Reeves that I was not a party to the case and had no right to be called. I was certain that they thought I would not be able to cope with the obvious intended grilling by C.O.W.S. I stood up and informed them that if C.O.W.S wanted me on the stand, it was okay with me. The Attorney General seemed thrilled that he had me in what was to be the hot seat. He confronted me with a cold stare like a prizefighter ready to demolish an inferior foe. His first question was, "Where were you the night before Christmas?" Instantly, I ascertained where he was leading, and I responded, "I was up in free New York." "What were you doing in New York?" he asked, somewhat flustered red. "I was up in New York trying to bring some justice to this social jungle called Dixie," I said with vigor. Ted Poston of the New York Post and Conrad Lynn gave out loud, defiant laughs. C.O.W.S tried to continue with a straight face. "Do you know Carl Braden of Louisville, the communist who burned his house down to collect insurance? Isn't he one of your supporters in this case? And don't you both belong to the Communist Committee to combat racial injustice?" He asked a series of questions in rapid succession. I knew he was attempting to smear my activity before the world press. This was his tactic, to demonstrate that the communists had mounted a conspiracy to slander North Carolina. Evidently, he felt if he could reveal a connection, he would be able to whitewash the evil shame of the state and justify the treatment of James and Fuzzy by using the psychological, mystic, everything is fair game in dealing with communist conspirators. Communists, from his point of view, was a magic word that could be relied on to turn logic and truth upside down. Yes, I know Carl Braden. He was a good man who had his home burned down by bigots and was framed like Dr. Albert E. Perry. I responded, taking the wind out of his sails. C.O.W.S was devastated. His planned ambush had failed. With a red face, he dismissed me in an atmosphere of courtroom laughter. 2 weeks after the farce of a court hearing and the folly of North Carolina laid bare before the world, the NAACP was informed that the boys could be released to better housing in another city. The NAACP secured an apartment in Charlotte, 25 miles from Monroe. The boys' mothers were given new furniture and better housing. The boys were taken to Charlotte, well scrubbed and with all new clothing. The press greeted them with a photographic occasion. The state of North Carolina, in conjunction with the NAACP, made a pitch to stage a show of humanity. Both of them, in collusion with the local press, quietly kept the red-baiting rumors humming, even inferring that I had received large sums of money as a result of my involvement with the case. They also told these lies to the mothers of the children in the attempt to alienate them from me. Chapter 30. Violent attacks on black women that demanded a response. In 1959, Mrs. Georgia May White, an Afro-American mother of 5 who worked in a Monroe hotel as a maid, was kicked down a flight of stairs into the hotel lobby by a white guest named Broadus Shaw. This railroad trainman claimed he kicked Mrs. White down the stairs because she had been making too much noise while working in the corridor and had disturbed his sleep. When we asked for an indictment, the chief of police, A.A. Mowney, flatly refused our requests. Finally, when we threatened to take legal action by bringing NAACP lawyers in, he relented and placed the man under a $75 bond. When this violent bigot failed to appear in court for his trial, the case was dismissed. That same day, there was another Afro-American woman in court, Mrs. Mary Ruth Reed. Mrs. Reed was 8 months pregnant. She was the victim of an attempted rape by a white man, Lewis Medlin. He had come into her home, drove her out of her house, and beat her because she refused to submit to his advances. He caught her while she was trying to escape down a dusty country road, knocked her down, and crawled on top of her. Her 7-year-old son armed himself with a fallen tree limb and came to the aid of his screaming mother by hitting her assailant over the head. She escaped and ran to a neighbor's house. Her neighbor, a white woman, gave her aid and called the police. The white neighbor accompanied Mrs. Reed to court to testify on her behalf. In the days preceding the court session, Mrs. Reed's relatives wanted to take vengeance on Lewis Medlin. I dissuaded them. The men in our rifle club wanted to go shoot up the house of the violent would-be rapist. I disagreed. They pleaded with me to allow them to drive out and throw dynamite on his porch. Some of them begged me with tears in their eyes to let them spray his house with machine gun fire. I dissuaded all of them and consoled them with the information that a woman Jewish lawyer from New York, a friend of Conrad Lynn, had volunteered to come down and prosecute the assaulter in court. The courtroom overflowed with Afro-American women. They had come to see justice done. They were silently showing their support for Mary Ruth Reed. Her white neighbor and the white woman lawyer from New York, everyone was aware of the fact that it required a lot of nerve for Mary's white neighbor to appear there on her behalf. She testified that she had seen the defendant chasing Mrs. Reed and that Mrs. Reed had come to her house in an excited, hysterical state without shoes and with her clothes torn from her. During the trial, Lewis Medlin's attorney arranged for the defendant's wife to sit by his side, as if she were also involved in the case. The only defense his attorney presented on Medlin's behalf consisted of denigrating statements against Mrs. Reed. He appealed to the judge's racism by dramatically stating, "Judge, Your Honor, you see this man with his wife at his side? This white woman, this pure flower of life. Judge, Your Honor, the white woman is God's greatest gift to man. Do you think that this white man would leave God's lovely creature for that?" And he pointed at Mrs. Reed with contempt and disdain. Angry groans permeated the courtroom. The judge struck his gavel and frowned impatiently as he announced, "Case dismissed." The white woman lawyer from New York had only been able to introduce herself to the court and to proclaim that she was Mrs. Reed's attorney. All of the pent-up emotions that had dogged the black women throughout their lives seemed to surface in their violent outcries. Pandemonium reigned, and violence was on the verge of being released. The court officials had to speedily dispatch Louis Medlin through the judge's chamber and out of harm's way. A wrath I had never known before or faced on the part of those I had led was now directed at me. I was reminded of the fact that I had trusted in the white folks' law, that I had kept Louis Medlin from being punished, that I had opened the floodgates on them, and that the court had given white men a license to do to them whatever they wanted to do with impunity. "Now what are you going to say?" one shouted.
The problem is white people. That would be one option. Incidentally, I heard all this, and they said that now the court has decreed that it's open season, and you can do whatever you want to with these open the floodgates metaphor. I thought Robert F. told us at the beginning of this book, Jesse Helms' white pappy with a 4th grade education dragged the black female down the street. Didn't he say that? He said white men bragged about raping black females. I thought he said that chapters ago, long time ago, when he was a little boy. This, if anything, this is just confirmation, reaffirmation of what you already knew. We rape you all anytime we want to. Smack you around anytime we want to. This didn't authorize nothing. We had this permission like forever. Anyway, for some reason Crystal Mangum came to mind. Isn't that crazy? Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy. We will pick up there next week, chapter 31. We will meet violence with violence. Chapter 31. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 #. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I did get the title in the interim. The white suspected racist author Ben Rappaport, his report, The Abandoned Pools of North Carolina. He was a guest. It was not 2025. I was in error. He was a guest on the program September 2024. So it's been 2 years. He was a guest on the program. I'm just giving a snippet from the description. Rappaport is a reporter at the Border Belt Independent. On last month's compensatory call-in, Gus shared an audio interview where Rappaport described his investigation. Rappaport described his investigation. Got the light turned. There we go. Rappaport described his investigation into abandoned pools of Columbus County, North Carolina. This report resonated with many COWS listeners and victims of white supremacy. There's such a robust global record of people classified as white laboring intensely to restrict black people's access to pools and beaches. And you can go and check out the broadcast, read even his report. It's online. That's not a book or anything. That's a short article, The Abandoned Pools of North Carolina from 2024. He did an audio, well, he certainly did an interview with us, and we actually heard him speaking about that article on a different clip on the compensatory call-in. I played that as well, so you can go back and hear what folks had to say about all of that. COWS Archives, robust. That's it. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564-943#. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Email untiljustice@gmail.com. Let's see. Folks who dialed in, if you have commentary on the second chunk of the reading, let's see. 5962 should be with us if you have commentary, sir.
Yes, sir. Have you heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I just only made a couple notes on this one, but one thing I will say for Mr. Williams to state that he suffered from a lot of headaches, migraines, and things of that nature, he definitely possesses the ability to sit and think things through. His ability to just be able to think that, hey, maybe it's not the best course of action for us to go by these white men's house and shoot it up and throw dynamite on there, especially with me, or with him having set up the NRA chapter and all of that, that this might jeopardize our ability to continue our armed defense of ourselves. I just think that's remarkable of how much he's able to think things through. I noted that again, just a lot of protection of white women, the white girl in the kissing case, and then as well as the Dr. Perry's case where he's charged falsely and put in jail. And I also noted the fact that it took an international, scope on the case for the two boys to be released from jail. I thought that was interesting. And then the last thing, I think, I noted also his his ability to think, in that, hey, let's pose as social workers so that we can kind of detail how these children are being treated and whatnot. And then his refusal to, under the pressure of the national office of the NAACP, his refusal to not kick Conrad Lynn, the civil rights attorney, off of the case, even though that's what the national NAACP recommended. And then lastly, in chapter 30, just all of the cowardliness of white supremacists, where it's constantly in this book where the targets of terrorizing is black women and children. And that's all I have.
Maybe 2 votes for examples of cowardly attacking a pregnant black, not even like a teaspoon, like 3rd trimester pregnant black female. I don't know what I mean. Yeah, dastardly, evil, all that. But I mean, Jesus Christ. That is kind of cowardly, in my opinion. You're rough and tough and all that. Like I said, you had a white man challenged to a duel in this book. You are tough. I go out and I shoot guns and white culture and Ben Tillman and all that, and I'm the man. Oh, hey, you don't insult my honor. You don't get the glove and smack me in my face and all that, and I'll see you at high noon and whatever. Hey, let's do it, nigga. You don't let no nigga challenge me to a duel and mouth off at me and whatever, Leroy. What? And then don't turn around. Don't turn around, and then some black female comes through now and now I'm Steve Austin. Now I'm ready to open a can or whip behind on you. Come on. That is real cowardly in my opinion. That's Dill. That's Webb. I done seen all that before. All of that. You're supposed to be tough. If you tough, hey, I'm Dill, I'm Webb. Hey, Michael Scholes. We don't like Negroes out here in Colorado. We're going to give you a year. Beat it, train. You make a decision. We're going to meet up high noon this time next spring, and we're going to see who the man is. That's, hey, I give you a chance. Not you up here in the library reading out, I'm tough. We've been training for a year and a half. Ain't nobody else in here got a gun now. I'm tough. That's cowardly. Racist for sure, but that's real cowardly. And white people do a lot of racist, cowardly things. The Klan even, that's real cowardly. Take 100 of you all in a mask to come and terrorize 3 black people. Cowards. We've been through all this. That's my view. I could be in error. Let's see. Finishing our email, since we didn't get it all. Chapter 28, Dr. Perry, our NAACP chapter's vice president, was indicted on a trumped-up charge of performing an abortion on a white woman. Of course, they had to make it a white woman. It's all about the fear of white genetic annihilation. ISIS papers, for sure. I called J. Ray Shute, a white Unitarian who had become a friend and was responsible for my converting to the Unitarian. He was also a local developer, considered to be one of the city fathers, considerably wealthy. We arrived at the Shute home. Mr. Shute invited us in. Chief Monty removed his hat. His arrogance had faded. Mr. Shute sat at his desk and read the charges, looked up at the chief and said, "I'm tired of all this racial trouble around here. It is getting so the colored people can't live in peace because of the bigots. I want it stopped. Do you understand?" Ray Shute, Mr. Williams' so-called white friend, was one of the most powerful, if not most powerful, white men in Monroe during this period. He established industries in the area and was considered a leader in government. He was all of the leaders of black people are white. Continuing, he writes, he was described as active in promoting social justice, whatever that means. What exactly did he mean by live in peace? Who were the bigots? No idea. 3. Dr. Perry was a Catholic physician who had refused to perform even legal abortion, sentenced to 5 years on a chain gang. Jesus Christ. He lost his license to practice medicine and was barred from his home in Monroe after his final release. They loved to get the Negro males on the chain gang. Dr. Perry died in 1972, age 51, Whiteville, Columbus County, North Carolina, of a heart attack. 1970, that means 51, sorry. Had been discussed. Whiteville, Columbus County, North Carolina has been discussed on the compensatory call-in. See White North Carolina sheriff who disparages black employees resigns, 2023. Chapter 29, internationally famous kissing case. Mayor of Monroe telephone call, colored juvenile delinquents had been jailed for molesting a white girl. He asked me to get their mothers to sign an authorization. The so-called juvenile delinquents were only 8 and 9 years old. The two, David Fuzzy Simpson and James Hanover Thompson, playing with a little white girl who sat on the older boy's lap and kissed him on the cheek. Within days of the arrest, Evelyn Thompson, James James' mother received an eviction notice. Evelyn Thompson and Jenny Simpson, David's widowed mother, were fired from their $15 a week domestic jobs. Gunshots were heard nightly in front of their homes, and crosses were burned in their front yard. Someone killed James' dog. We hadn't heard this before. By the way, white man's best friend, Romulus and Remus's nephews here, Nat King Cole. We've heard this many, many times before. White people love their dogs so. They are so vested in racism. I will kill a Negro's dog. No, you don't kill. I will kill the Negro's hound. Both eventually left town. Kelly Alexander, mortician from Charlotte, who presided over the North Carolina State Conference of NAACP branches, seeking help for the boys. National Executive Director Roy Wilkins, both were more concerned with not involving the organization in a sex issue than they were in seeking justice for the two unjustly imprisoned young boys. Conrad Lynn, militant black lawyer, volunteered to help us and take the case. Some organizations raise funds to help pay for legal fees. George Weissman, also from New York, called and asked if he could come with Lynn. Mr. Lynn, the militant, died in 1995, opposed the draft during World War II and the Vietnam War. He was a member of the Communist Party during the 1920s and 30s, but was ousted due to his support of odd-striking Trinidadian oil workers in the UK. He also was a lawyer for Jamil Abdul Al-Amin, H. Rap Brown. He wrote an autobiography, There is a Fountain, George Levon Weissman. I suspect he has ancestry in the Jewish religion. American Marxist Socialist Workers Party leader, founded the Committee to Combat Racial Injustice, which aided the defendants in the Kissing case. In 1964, the FBI created a poem accusing Weissman of stealing money from the home of Dr. A.E. Perry, the Monroe head of the Committed to aid the defendants. Copies of the poem were sent to James Baldwin. Fascinating. I think Roy Wilkins may have been an informant for the FBI, whether knowing, unknowing, paid. Have to double check, but I think that is true. Have to go double check. The Voice of America began to discuss the Kissing case in some of its broadcasts. See, Trump moves to close down Voice of America. Thomas McIntosh, 2026. 5. I could be offered the job of the soon-to-be retiring field representative. My answer was to stay put and finish the work that I had started. Gloucester B., current then NAACP director of branches, told me that I was unwittingly getting tied up with Reds. Lynn had been expelled from the United States Communist Party. George Weissman was a character of the Socialist Workers Party. My response was that I didn't give a damn if they were from hell. Mr. Williams remaining codified. Stand by your work. Neely Fuller Jr. Facts. 6. North Carolina Attorney General C.O.W.S. Malcolm Buell Sewell gained prominence in North Carolina for his aggressive efforts to prosecute the KKK, eventually pushing them out of Robeson County. He begrudgingly accepted Brown v. Board of Education as the law of the land and supported token integration efforts. I guess he's another example of those so-called white friends. His father, Aaron Ashley Flowers Sewell, was also Attorney General at one time for the state of North Carolina. 2 weeks after the farce of a court hearing, the NAACP was informed that the boys could be released to better housing in another city. The NAACP secured an apartment in Charlotte. Boys' mothers were given new furniture and better housing. The state of North Carolina, with the NAACP, made a pitch to stage a show of humanity. I don't know what that means. Both James and David were harassed and re-arrested for the rest of their lives by racist white supremacist Monroe police. Dave said to Oprah Winfrey during an interview, as an adult, I was never able to get out of the system. I don't know anyone who has, Dave. Chapter 30, violent attacks on black women that demanded a response. Mrs. Georgia May White, an Afro-American mother of 5 who worked in a Monroe hotel as a maid, was kicked down a flight of stairs into the hotel lobby by a white guest named Boris Shaw. Violent bigot failed to appear in court for his trial, and the case was dismissed. Mrs. Mary Ruth Reed. Mrs. Reed was 8 months pregnant. She was the victim of an attempted rape by a white man. C.O.W.S guest Danielle McGuire at the dark end of the street. Danielle McGuire is a white woman. Black women, rape, and resistance. A new history of the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks to the rise of black power. She was a guest in September 2011, which I think is about the same year that that book came out. I'm very sure that in addition to Rosa Parks and Joanne Little, the Kissing Case and Monroe, North Carolina, Robert Williams is specifically, I don't know how it could not be, mentioned explicitly as an example of the many, many iterations of black males and black people in general rising up in response to white men raping black females over and over, because this is such a massive component of white supremacy racism. But yes, she was a guest many some years back. 2. Men in our rifle club want us to go out and shoot up the house of the violent would-be rapists. I disagreed. They pleaded. I dissuaded all of them and consoled them with the information that a woman, Jewish lawyer from New York, a friend of Conrad Lynn, had volunteered to come down and prosecute the assaulter. Mr. Williams has a clear understanding of the ninth area of people activity, war and counter-war, and the consequence of misapplying it. Those white people of the Jewish religion continue to have a prominent place in this text. 3. The trial. Lewis Medlin's attorney arranged for the defendant's wife to sit by his side as if she were also involved in the case. He appealed to the judge's racism by dramatically stating, "Judge, Your Honor, white woman, this pure flower of life. White woman is God's greatest gift. White man would leave God's lovely creature for that." The judge struck his gavel. Case dismissed. A wrath I had never known before or faced on the part of those I had led was now directed at me. Why we must remain united, independent, and be prepared for possible antagonism from both suspected racist and non-white victims when we are attempting to produce justice. White women, what more can I say? It is not the man, it is the system, white men, white women, white children even. Let's see. What notes did I get in? Much obliged for our emails. Let's see. The portion where they said the courtroom overflowed with Afro-American women, they had come to see justice done. They were silently showing their support for Mary Ruth Reed, her white neighbor, and the white woman lawyer from New York. I get it for Mary Ruth Reed, but the white neighbor? Even the white woman from New York. I appreciate you calling the police and all and coming to try the case, but I mean, I'm here for Mary Ruth Reed. Thank you. She said everyone was aware of the fact that it required a lot of nerve for Mary's white neighbor to appear there on her behalf. She testified that she had seen the defendant chasing Mrs. Reed and that Mrs. Reed had come to her house in an excited, hysterical state without shoes and with her clothes torn from her. Did they have any evidence of the white woman's, her neighbor? Did she get terrorized? Like, did she get payback for this? Did her children get arrested for the rest of their life? I'm just asking. Just asking. Did she have to move? Change her name? Go into witness protection? Just asking. Carl Braden, we interviewed a suspected racist white woman. She wrote a biography. Biography Kings, she wrote a biography on Carl and Ann Braden. These are supposed to be two white people who are not racist in Kentucky. During this same time period, they helped a black person buy a house in that area in a racially restricted region. They had contact with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. These are supposed to be two white people who are not racist. I challenged the white author about that when she was a guest on our program, because the Bradens, allegedly, white people punished them, and so as you heard, they were having difficulties financially and all the rest, so they were trying to see if they could get Dr. King to speak up on their behalf. And I said, oh, wait a minute now, you all are white. You all are not ignorant about racism. You all already know all the difficulties Dr. King is having. You want Dr. King, a privileged black male, to further risk himself. You all are supposed to be alleged communists. You want him to risk himself to come out on your behalf as white people, as though he doesn't have enough already? And she said, I hadn't thought of it that way. Like, yeah, that is a little, amongst, I mean, it's beyond that, but just, do what now? Do what now? White people got to go to the black. Excuse me, Dr. King, I know you already got a full plate and everything, but your sick white brothers, we sure could use some, like, get out of here. Get out of here. Get out. Go get some. You got white friends, I know. I know Dr. King is not your only friend. If he is, that right there lets me know what it is to be white. You can't be ignorant about racism. You get ostracized, like Michelle Alexander's white mother. You get ostracized. You mess around and act like you don't want to practice racism correctly as a white woman, white man. But yeah, I'm not ignorant about no Braden's racist suspects. I was not impressed with their conduct. The NAACP, again, I'm going to have to go back and check, but I think Roy Wilkins was on the list of informants for the FBI, and even if he wasn't, I keep mentioning Joe Spingarn. That organization was thoroughly, and as he said, you don't have informants, that organization was not just thoroughly infiltrated, compromised and infiltrated at the highest level. So it's not just we know everything that you're doing, we do, but we are able to guide what the organization does and what the spirit ethos of what we're doing at all of our branches and what this organization is about, because we've been there from the foundation and have guided this organization from day one. That is like, you don't know what domination looks like. So that, in addition to, I think Roy Wilkins was an informant. So all of that might help explain why. And Joel Spingarn, he was in military intelligence. The people, and he was white, the white people who were controlling this apparatus, the NAACP and a lot of the spying and such, they probably knew about Robert F. Williams. They probably had a dossier on Robert F. Williams for at least a decade by this point. They had files on him in the 1940s. We're talking 1957, so we got a good decade, and we've been watching this nigger up that he causing trouble and going around here and doing all this. Oh, yeah, we know who you is. They've been watching all this, so when he makes that call, like, oh, you don't want to be involved with nothing with this, nigga, nah, we don't want nothing to do with it, nah, that's you all sex thing, and nah, we don't want nothing to do with that. Then, once this starts getting a lot of attention, and hey, we can get him on some of this publicity, and it looks kind of bad. We're supposed to be the premier so-called civil rights organization, and we don't have anything to say about this case that's being talked about all around the world. That looks kind of bad. Go ahead and get it. Tell him we'll pay for the legal team. We'll pay for the attorney and all that. What? We told you all about this from the beginning. You said you didn't want to be involved and said, well, you know, things have changed and all. White people told us we got to know. White people told us we should get involved in that, so we don't get involved. Like, man, come on. That codification, too. We're going to stick with the people that brought us here. You didn't want to be involved, don't be involved. We're going to stick with the folks who brought us here. Let's see. Fuller did says, tacky, trashy, terroristic. Doesn't get any better. The importance of the black press as well. You had a lot of black press covering the so-called kissing case, and then it spread where you had lots of people all around the world talking about this case, and people coming over from London and all the rest of it. News still very important. Let's see. All the talk that they're having now about abortions and trying to restrict access to abortions, particularly for white women, and particularly in this case having Dr. Perry, black male, accused of all this. Anyway, I have to go and check to see what his chain gang experience was like. Might have some articles about that. 5 years, and even just that reminded me of the ongoing attack against black medical professionals. We don't want no black doctors anyway, now or then, and all the effort to make sure that that is deliberately the case, to compromise the health and well-being of black people, just like making sure that black people don't even have the thought in their brain computer to visit a library, crack a non-fiction book. That's it. We will pick it up next week. Man, fantastic book. Learning lots. For your requests. Seems important. more information. We'll do it up tomorrow and Sunday, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. White guest on Sunday, and tomorrow we'll do our weekly counter-racist review. I just said pool. Now, we've been all this about pool deaths in North Carolina and all that. You can go back and hear Mr. Rappaport, the abandoned pools of North Carolina. I just said they've been talking about black pool deaths this summer, 2026. I'm not including Nolan Wells, Daniel Irving. Those are water deaths, but I'm not even including those in the tally. We will hear updates on both, including they got an indictment in the Daniel Irving case. Duh, you get a suspicious drowning and the white friends who were present, they throw your phone away and hide the evidence because, oh, this was just a tragic accident. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, with Michelle Alexander, my white friends. My white friends. I guess don't go swimming with your white friends. Sobriety would be begun, especially, hey. Do not consume alcohol and go swimming or partying with your white friends. Nolan Wells, Daniel Irving, white friends, white friends, white friends. Creator, we ask that you remind us, Nolan Wells, Daniel Irving, stop saying not all white people are racist. What about Miss Reed's neighbor? Stop saying not all white people are racist. We ask that you remind us, stop name-calling and cursing people classified as black. What about the Uncle Toms and snitches and finks, informants? Stop cursing and name-calling people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cows signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.